What if Naruto unlocked his hidden shadow clone power early? Naruto lay on his futon, staring up at the darkened ceiling of Tezuna's home. The faint flicker of candlelight from the hallway cast long, shifting shadows across the room. But none of it helped soothe the storm in his mind. His body was exhausted, muscles aching from the battle on the bridge. But sleep refused to come. Every time he closed his eyes, the same scene replayed over and over in his head. Sasuke's motionless body, pierced by Haku's Senbon needles, falling lifelessly to the ground. Naruto's heart clenched painfully at the memory. He could still see the look in Sasuke's eyes. Just before he jumped in front of him, the needles had been aimed for Naruto, and Sasuke had stepped in without hesitation, taking the attack. He and Naruto had watched in horror as his rival and teammate collapsed, blood seeping from the wounds, his body going still. Why? Naruto whispered into the silence of the room, his voice hoarse. Why did he have to do that? I was right. Their guilt weighed heavily on his chest, making it hard to breathe. Sasuke had nearly died, and it was all because of him. If Naruto had been faster, stronger, more capable, Sasuke wouldn't have needed to step in. He wouldn't have had to risk his life to protect Naruto from something he should have been able to handle on his own. It's my fault, Naruto muttered, turning over again. Restless, the quietness of the house felt oppressive, like it was mocking him for his failure. His fists clenched tightly around the sheets. No matter how hard he tried to justify it, there was no escaping the truth. Sasuke had nearly died because of his weakness. The thought made his heart pound in frustration. How could he call himself a ninja, a future Hokage, if he couldn't even protect his friends, if he wasn't strong enough to keep the people he cared about safe? With a sudden burst of energy, Naruto threw off his blanket and sat up. He couldn't just lie here helpless. He couldn't let this happen again. If he wanted to keep Sasuke, Sakura, and everyone else safe, he had to get stronger. Now Naruto glanced out the window, where the moon hung low in the sky, casting a pale light over the village. He made up his mind quietly. He slipped on his sandals, tightened his headband, and crept out of the room he needed to train. Naruto made his way through the dark forest, the same one where he had run into Haku during his last training session. The moonlight barely pierced through the dense canopy of trees, casting long, eerie shadows along the path. But Naruto wasn't intimidated. He was too fired up to notice. He had to get stronger, for his cherished people's sake. And for himself, he reached the familiar clearing and stood there for a few moments, brow furrowed in thought. Trying to focus, the stillness of the forest at night gave him a rare sense of calm, until he broke it with a loud groan. Scratching the back of his head, "Ugh, I have no idea what to work on," Naruto shouted to the trees, throwing his hands up in frustration. I'm already amazing at everything." He puffed out his chest, but the confidence didn't last long, his expression quickly shifting back to one of confusion. With a dramatic sigh, he plopped down on the ground, arms crossed as he stared at the sky, thinking. Then, like a bolt of lightning, an idea hit him. Naruto's eyes lit up, and he jumped to his feet. "Akakashi, I said my chakra control needs work," he exclaimed, a grin spreading across his face. "That's it, I'll work on my tree climbing. I'll get so far ahead of Sasuke. He won't know what hit him." He burst into laughter, the sound echoing through the empty forest as he walked off, scanning the area for a suitable tree to begin his training. A few hours later, Naruto sat slumped at the base of a tree, breathing heavily, sweat dripping down his face. His legs felt like lead, and his chakra was draining faster than he expected. He looked around at the still, silent forest and sighed. "It's so quiet in this forest at night," he muttered. For someone as loud and energetic as Naruto, the lack of sound was unnerving. He was used to the hustle and bustle of the village, the noise of people around him. Out here, he felt almost alone. With a frown, Naruto formed a hand sign, summoning a shadow clone beside him. "Hey, I just wanted some company since it's so quiet and creepy out here," Naruto said casually. The clone grinned, throwing a mock salute. "No problem, boss," it said before sitting down beside him, lounging comfortably against the tree. While Naruto pushed himself to his feet to continue training, he launched into another attempt at tree climbing. But his concentration wavered as he heard a loud, obnoxious yawn from the clone. Naruto's foot slipped, and he fell unceremoniously to the ground with a loud thud. "Hey," Naruto snapped, glaring at his clone, who was now rolling with laughter. "You made me mess up." The clone's laughter intensified, clutching its sides as it pointed at Naruto's fallen form. "You should have seen your face," priceless, fuming. Naruto pulled out a kunai and launched it at the clone in frustration. "I'll show you, priceless," he shouted as the clone narrowly dodged. Its laughter turning into panicked screams. Naruto gave chase, throwing kunai with reckless abandon, determined to get payback for the insult. The clone, however, had inherited Naruto's knack for pranking and evasion. It ducked behind trees, dashed through bushes, and disappeared into the night. Naruto in hot pursuit, but no matter how fast Naruto ran, his clone always stayed just ahead, laughing and shouting taunts. After a few minutes, Naruto came to a panting stop, hands on his knees as he glared into the shadows where the clone had disappeared. "Damn it, where did that idiot go?" Frustrated but tired, Naruto eventually gave up the chase and returned to his training, but just as he was about to make another attempt at tree climbing, a random memory flashed in his mind. He remembered tripping over a root earlier, face-planting into a tree while running. The image was so vivid, so clear, that it made Naruto pause mid-step. Wait, he hadn't tripped his clone. Had Naruto blinked, confused at first, but then a slow grin spread across his face as he started to laugh. Remembering how his clone had looked running from him, "That idiot tripped," he said to himself between fits of laughter, wiping a tear from his eye. "Serves him right." But after a few moments, his laughter died down. A cold, creeping realization began to settle in. Naruto's expression shifted from amusement to something more serious. As his laughter trailed off completely, he stood there in silence for a long moment, the memory playing over in his head again and again. Slowly, Naruto narrowed his eyes. "Wait a second," he muttered, brows furrowing. "How the hell do I know that happened?" He hadn't seen it happen. He had been too far away at the time, but the memory was so clear in his mind, as if he had experienced it himself. Naruto stood still, the forest now unnervingly quiet again, his mind racing if that memory wasn't his. But the clones then, what did that mean? Suddenly, it clicked. His clones, when they dispelled, their memories came back to him, but not just vague feelings or impressions. Actual experiences. Naruto's eyes widened in realization, his heart pounding in his chest. "That's it, I can use my clones for training. Everything they learn, I learn too." He grinned, his exhaustion forgotten, excitement bubbling up inside him. This was it, the key to getting stronger, faster than anyone else with this new discovery. Naruto could feel his determination reigniting. He would push himself harder than ever. And next time, he wouldn't be too weak. He wouldn't let Sasuke, or anyone else, get hurt because of him. The next day, the sun rose over Tizuna's home, casting a soft golden glow across the training ground where Team 7 had gathered for another day of Kakashi's regiment. Sasuke stood, as always, with a cool, focused look, while Sakura observed her teammates with mild concern. Naruto, however, was visibly different today. His usual fiery energy seemed dimmed, his movements slower and less precise, his expression slightly strained. Kakashi began their morning drills, as usual, ordering them to go through their exercises. Sasuke leapt into action immediately, his competitive nature driving him forward. While Naruto lagged behind, he stumbled slightly during the warm-up run, falling out of pace with Sasuke. Something he'd usually stubbornly fight to avoid. His attempts at ninjutsu were sloppier than normal, the hand signs coming out awkward, and Rush Naruto's chakra control wasn't much better either. He stumbled through the exercises, trying to cling to the determination that had burned in him the night before, but fatigue was already dragging at him, and it showed. His breath came out heavier, his movements slower. "Come on, Naruto, keep up," Sakura called out, though there was a hint of teasing in her voice. As she noticed Naruto's sluggishness, "You're supposed to be the one with all that energy, right?" Naruto shot her a half-hearted glare, his usual snark absent. I'm fine," he replied, forcing out a grin and giving a thumbs up, though he could barely hide how tired he felt. His muscles ached from last night's training, and his chakra reserves were already lower than they should have been. Sasuke glanced briefly at Naruto, noting the lag, but said nothing. His own focus remained entirely on improving his own skills, unaware of the deeper struggle Naruto was going through. Kakashi, however, wasn't so easily fooled as he watched from the sidelines, his one visible eye followed Naruto's sluggish movements with mild concern. "He's slower than usual," Kakashi thought, "and sloppier too." His normally sharp attention to detail was off. While Naruto wasn't exactly the most coordinated ninja, he usually had enough raw energy to push through. Kakashi's mind wandered back to last night. He had seen Naruto sneaking out of the house after everyone else had fallen asleep at the time. Kakashi hadn't thought much of it. Naruto had always been one to work through his feelings by training, and given what they'd been through, Sasuke nearly dying, The confrontation with Zabuza and Haku, it made sense that Naruto would need to blow off some steam, but now, watching Naruto struggle through the drills, Kakashi's curiosity was piqued. Is he overdoing it still? He decided not to push the issue. Yet Naruto's tendency to act impulsively was nothing new, and for now, Kakashi chose to let it slide. He'd keep an eye on him. Though as the day wore on and training wrapped up, Naruto dragged himself through. The final set of exercises, his breaths were ragged, his legs heavy, and by the time Kakashi called it a day, he was on the verge of collapsing. He leaned against a tree, wiping the sweat from his brow. Though he refused to let anyone see how drained he really was, Kakashi approached him with a water bottle. Eyeing Naruto's hunched posture, "You're looking pretty tired today. Naruto, you might want to pace yourself, no need to burn out." Naruto blinked up at him, forcing a grin that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Heh, I'm good, I'm just, warming up," that's all he said, though his voice lacked its usual confidence. Kakashi's eye crinkled in mild amusement behind his mask. "MMHM," he said, clearly not buying it, but choosing not to press the issue. He handed Naruto the water bottle and left him with a simple nod. Naruto took a long drink, his mind racing with thoughts of the previous night's training. Tonight, he thought, "I'll work even harder, I'll get stronger, no matter what." That night, as the night deepened and the village fell into a quiet stillness, Kakashi sat by the window, casually reading one of his books. His senses remained sharp. Even when he seemed completely absorbed in his reading, he didn't need to wait long before he felt Naruto sneaking out again. He sighed softly, not even bothering to look up again. It was the second night in a row. But Kakashi wasn't entirely surprised. Naruto's restless nature was predictable, especially after what they'd been through. Probably just training by himself again. Kakashi mused. He could tell Naruto had been pushing himself hard all day, though it seemed like the boy hadn't yet learned his limits still. He decided to let it go for now. After all, there wasn't much he could do to stop Naruto's stubborn drive. Naruto wasn't one to sit still when something weighed heavily on him. Plus, Kakashi had a hunch that Naruto was simply trying to burn off the stress that had built up since the bridge incident. But Kakashi made a mental note. If Naruto kept sneaking out after tonight, he'd have to step in. If he's overworking himself, it'll only slow him down in the long run. For now, though, Kakashi let him be, confident that Naruto would tire himself out soon enough. Naruto's night training. Meanwhile, Naruto found himself back in the forest clearing, his exhaustion momentarily forgotten as he summoned the excitement he'd felt the previous night. This time, he was determined to push even further. He already knew the power of his shadow clones to speed up his training, but tonight he had a more structured plan. He wasn't just here to blow off steam. He was here to make real progress. With a wide grin, Naruto made the hand signs and created dozens of shadow clones. Watching as the clearing suddenly filled with identical versions of himself, the clones immediately split into groups, each one focusing on a different area of training. Some ran up trees, focusing on chakra control as they practiced tree climbing, while others pulled out kunai for target practice, launching them at the bark of nearby trees. A group of clones broke off into pairs, sparring with each other in basic taijutsu exercises, their movements clumsy but determined. Naruto, standing in the center of it all, crossed his arms proudly. "Heh, with this many clones working at once, I'll be way stronger than Sasuke." In no time, he imagined the look on Sasuke's face when he finally surpassed him, and the thought made him grin even wider. He watched his clones work tirelessly. Some continued tree climbing, trying to hold their chakra steady as they walked up the vertical trunks. Others flung kunai at distant targets, hitting the marks with varying degrees of success. Several pairs of clones engaged in mock taijutsu battles, their fists and feet flying in well-practiced katas, while a few others, more misguided, dropped to the ground and began cranking out push-ups and sit-ups, all under the misguided assumption that Naruto would gain physical strength from their efforts. What Naruto didn't realize, of course, was that the physical gains from these exercises wouldn't transfer to him. He wasn't thinking about the technicalities, only the results, and he was so focused on the progress he imagined he'd make that he pushed aside the weariness already creeping into his limbs. His chakra was depleting fast, but Naruto kept pressing on. The clones continued working through the night, each one focused on a different aspect of training, and though Naruto's body felt the weight of exhaustion, the thrill of getting stronger kept him moving. He just had to push a little harder. Tomorrow, he'd be even better. The next day dawned, bringing with it the familiar routine of Team 7's training session as the sun climbed higher, casting a warm glow over the training ground. It became evident that Naruto was struggling. His usual energetic demeanor was noticeably absent. The once lively boy was now moving with a lethargy that was impossible to ignore. His attempts at the exercises were clumsy, and he lagged significantly behind his teammate Sasuke, ever observant and critical, noticed Naruto's diminished performance with a hint of frustration. He commented, "Extra training won't help you catch up if you're going to be in this state during our team drills." His tone was blunt, underscoring his point. Sakura, though concerned, chose not to confront Naruto directly. She didn't entirely disagree with Sasuke's assessment, but felt his words were colder than necessary. She gave Naruto a sympathetic glance before following Sasuke as he walked past, leaving Naruto alone with his thoughts. Kakashi approached Naruto with a serious expression. "You're dragging down your teammates with this. You need to cut back on the extra training," he said, his tone firm but not unkind. He could see that Naruto's excessive training was taking a toll, both physically and on the team's overall performance. Naruto stood silently as his teammates departed, staring at the ground with a mixture of frustration and resignation. The weight of Kakashi's words pressed heavily on him. He couldn't afford to stop his training. It was his only means of getting stronger quickly. The thought of giving up on this method was disheartening, and his resolve remained unshaken despite the weariness that night. As night fell and the village quieted down, Naruto slipped out of the house once again. He returned to the familiar forest clearing, driven by a sense of urgency tonight. He was determined to push his limits even further, summoning his shadow clones. He watched as they sprang into action this time. However, the exhaustion was evident even among the clones. Their movements were sluggish, mirroring Naruto's own fatigue. Within an hour, the clearing was filled with clones struggling through their exercises, some clumsily climbing trees, others missing their targets with kunai, and a few engaged in lackluster taijutsu sparring. Naruto, standing amid the chaos, felt frustration boiling inside him. "Come on, we need to push harder," he shouted, trying to rally his clones despite his efforts. The clones were too worn out to perform at their best, their sluggishness a direct result of Naruto's own exhaustion. Suddenly, a hand rested gently on Naruto's shoulder, startling him instinctively. Naruto tried to react defensively, but collapsed awkwardly onto the ground. He looked up to see Kakashi standing there, his expression a mix of solemnity and understanding. "Naruto," Kakashi began, his voice steady, "so this is why you're so exhausted. Honestly, I'm impressed. I thought you were just doing some extra training, but you've figured out an advanced training method implementing your shadow clones. Only someone with considerable chakra reserves could attempt something like this. But as you can see, there are significant downsides to this approach. I'm ordering you, as your Jonin sensei, to stop this." Naruto's face fell, a mix of shock and disappointment crossing his features. He opened his mouth to protest, but Kakashi raised a hand to silence him. Defeated, Naruto nodded and slowly rose to his feet. He followed Kakashi back towards Tezuna's house, his steps heavy with reluctance. As they arrived at the house, Kakashi turned to Naruto with a gentle, "If tired, smile, get some rest." "Naruto, you need it." Naruto nodded silently, his mind overwhelmed by a sense of loss. The prospect of not being able to use his method for speeding up his training weighed heavily on him as he entered his room. His thoughts remained clouded with sadness. However, the exhaustion proved too much. As soon as his head touched the pillow, the weariness overtook him, and he succumbed to a deep, much-needed sleep. Naruto woke up groggily the next morning. Blinking in the soft light filtering through the window, he sat up in his futon, memories of the previous night flooding back. Kakashi had ordered him to stop his extra training. With a heavy sigh, Naruto got up, resigned to the fact that there was no point in moping around if he couldn't use his shadow clone training method anymore. He'd just have to put even more effort into the regular team sessions. As he prepared himself for the day, he noticed something odd. The house was eerily quiet, no sound of his teammates, no chatter from the others. Confused, Naruto went downstairs, where he found Tsunami in the kitchen, humming softly as she prepared a meal. "Good afternoon, Naruto," she greeted with a warm smile. Naruto, still half asleep, mumbled a sleepy "good afternoon" back, before his eyes widened with sudden realization. "Wait, afternoon? No way. It's still morning, right?" Tsunami chuckled, shaking her head. "No, Naruto, it's the afternoon. You slept in." Naruto's face turned pale. "Too slept in? No way," he shouted, bolting out of the kitchen, tossing a quick "see you later" to Tsunami as he sprinted toward the training grounds. When he arrived, Naruto was horrified to see his team just wrapping up their training session out of breath and panicked. Naruto stumbled over to them, hands on his knees as he bowed. Repeatedly, "I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to sleep an eye." Kakashi waved him off with a casual smile, his eye crinkling in amusement beneath his mask. "It's fine. Naruto, I'm glad you finally got some rest. You needed it." Naruto, still catching his breath, blinked at Kakashi in surprise. He had expected a harsher reaction. But instead, Kakashi seemed oddly understanding now. Then, Kakashi said, turning to face the entire team, "You three, line up. I have something important to discuss with you all." Sasuke, Sakura, and Naruto lined up before him, curious about what Kakashi had in mind. The tension in the air was palpable, especially for Naruto, who had been dreading this conversation all morning. Kakashi stood before them, his tone unusually serious, as I'm sure you've noticed. "One of you has been struggling to keep up during our team's training sessions." Naruto's heart sank, his gaze dropping to the ground in embarrassment. He knew this was about him, but Kakashi continued, "Their reason is not without merit." Naruto slowly raised his head. Confused, he saw Sasuke and Sakura glance at him, their expressions curious but not harsh. Kakashi gestured toward Naruto. "Naruto has been training hard. In fact, he's been pushing himself far beyond what any of you may have realized, but in doing so, he's also been causing more harm than good." "Naruto, explain what you've been working on during these extra sessions." Naruto hesitated for a moment, looking at Kakashi for permission. The silver-haired Jonin gave him a reassuring nod with a deep breath. Naruto faced his teammates. "Well, I found out something about my shadow clone jutsu. When one of my clones dispels, I get their memories." Sasuke raised an eyebrow, intrigued, while Sakura looked puzzled. "Okay, but how's that making you so exhausted?" she asked. Kakashi stepped in to explain. "Naruto has been using this ability with impressive creativity. Essentially, whatever his clones learn, Naruto learns too." But he glanced at Naruto. "He's been pushing himself too hard by using dozens of clones at once, on top of our daily training regimen." Sakura's eyes widened, and even Sasuke's expression changed to one of mild surprise as the weight of what Kakashi was saying sank. "And you mean," Sakura started, her voice laced with shock, "Naruto's been multiplying his training through his clones learning that much all at once?" Kakashi nodded. "That's right, it's an advanced training method, one that could be incredibly effective for someone with Naruto's chakra reserves. However," he said, turning to face Naruto directly, "even with his large reserves, the mental and physical stress of using so many clones has been overwhelming him. That's why I've forbidden him from continuing this extra training for now." Naruto nodded, his earlier defiance replaced with resignation. He knew Kakashi was right, but it still stung to admit that his method, while effective, was too much for him to handle alone. Kakashi looked thoughtfully at Naruto before continuing. "That said, I've been thinking rather than have you abandon this method entirely, I believe we can implement it into our team's regular training sessions. By doing so, we can help everyone improve while keeping Naruto's progression at a rapid pace, but without pushing him past his limits." Naruto blinked in surprise, hope rekindling in his chest. "Wait, you're saying I can still use the clones?" he asked, his voice tinged with cautious optimism. Kakashi nodded. "Yes, but under more controlled conditions. You'll use fewer clones, and we'll integrate them into our team training. This way, you can still use the advantage of the shadow clones without risking burnout." Naruto felt a wave of relief wash over him. He wouldn't have to give up on his progress entirely, and with Kakashi's guidance, maybe he could find a way to grow even faster. Safely, Sasuke glanced at Naruto, his usual competitive smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Don't think this means you'll catch up to me." Naruto, now more energized, shot back a confident grin. "Oh, just watch, Sasuke, I'll surpass you in no time." Sakura, though still processing everything, smiled at Naruto's renewed enthusiasm. "Just don't overdo it again. Okay, we don't need you collapsing on us during missions," she said, her tone both teasing and sincere. Naruto nodded vigorously, his determination restored. "You got it." Satisfied with their reactions, Kakashi clapped his hands together. "All right, now that today's training session is over, it's time to head back to the bridge. We're overseeing its completion." As usual, the three genin straightened up. Preparing to leave the bridge was nearly finished now, and tomorrow they would finally return to Konoha. As the genin started to walk toward the bridge, Kakashi called out, "Naruto, stay behind for a minute. We need to go over your new training schedule." Naruto approached Kakashi, waiting eagerly for instructions. "So, what's the new plan, Kakashi-sensei?" he asked, his voice full of anticipation. Kakashi turned to him, his tone more serious. "First off, Naruto, the max number of clones you'll be using for now is 20 total. I want to ease you into this, so you don't overwork yourself again. Naruto's enthusiasm dimmed slightly. 20, but I was using way more than that before. Kakashi nodded. I know, but for now, it's more important to focus on refining your basics. We probably won't have another full training session until we're back in Konoha, but until then, you'll only be using your clones to practice the essentials. Naruto let out a sigh, his shoulders slumping. The basics? How exactly, Kakashi? Confirmed. You need to catch up on the fundamentals since that's where you're currently lacking the most. He held Naruto's gaze as he spoke, his tone firm, but not harsh. Even if you're only using 5 clones at a time to practice something like projectile throwing, that's still 5 extra days of practice every single day, and when we add that to what you'll be doing during our daily team sessions, it won't take long for your skills to catch up to your peers. Naruto opened his mouth to argue. He wanted to say that he was already on par with the others. Maybe not Sasuke, but at least some of his classmates. But then he stopped himself. He thought back to his academy days and the constant struggle to keep up. There was a reason he'd been labeled the dead last. Sure, he might be able to outlast some of his old classmates in stamina, but he knew deep down that Kakashi was right. His basics were lacking. Naruto let out a quiet sigh of resignation and nodded. All right, Kakashi-sensei, I'll focus on the basics. Kakashi's expression softened slightly. Good. Now, you're probably wondering how this training is going to help your teammates as well, right? Naruto nodded, curious. He couldn't exactly share the memories from his clones with Sasuke and Sakura. So what could they gain from this? Kakashi smiled under his mask. Simple. We'll be using your clones as mock enemies. You'll use them to create lifelike battle scenarios. I'll instruct your clones on how to fight and what tactics to use. And then you, Sasuke, and Sakura will have to work together to deal with the situation. Naruto's eyes widened in excitement. Whoa, that sounds awesome. So it'll be like real battle practice. Kakashi nodded. Exactly. It'll give you the experience of fighting multiple enemies, which is a skill you'll need to hone as a ninja. Plus, it will help sharpen your teammates' teamwork and strategy. Naruto's excitement returned in full force. He couldn't wait to test it out. The thought of being able to use his clones in actual team scenarios and not just as training tools for himself made him feel like he was contributing something valuable to his team. This is going to be so cool. Naruto grinned. Kakashi chuckled softly at Naruto's renewed energy. Right now that that's dealt with, let's go join the others on the bridge. Naruto nodded eagerly, falling in a step beside Kakashi. As they headed back toward the bridge, the excitement bubbling within him was tempered only by a quiet determination. He was ready to move forward, one step at a time, and catch up to the rest of his team. The next day, Team 7 stood proudly on the now completed bridge, the villagers buzzing with excitement. Tizuna, with a wide grin, officially named the structure the Great Naruto Bridge in honor of the young ninja who had played such a key role in defending the village. Naruto couldn't hide his pride, standing tall as the bridge was named after him, his smile wide and contagious. After bidding farewell to Tizuna and his family, Team 7 began their journey back to Konoha without the added weight of Tizuna and the mission's tension. The trip was much faster. The team moved through the forest with ease, making it back to Konoha by the evening. As they entered the village gates, Kakashi turned to his students. Good work. All of you, you're dismissed for the day. Get some rest. We'll reconvene tomorrow. Sasuke and Sakura nodded and headed off in different directions, but Naruto lingered behind, an anxious look in his eyes. Kakashi-sensei. Wait, he called out. Kakashi paused, turning to face the boy. What is it? Naruto fidgeted, a little nervous, before finally blurting out his request. Can I use my shadow clones tonight for training? I haven't trained in a few days, and I really want to keep improving. Kakashi studied Naruto for a moment, his expression unreadable behind his mask. Then, with a soft sigh, he nodded. All right, Naruto, I'll allow it, but remember, no more than 20 clones, and keep it focused on the basics. Naruto's face lit up in excitement. Thanks, Kakashi-sensei, I promise I'll stick to it with that. The boy raced off to the training grounds. Kakashi, shaking his head with a fond smile, made his way to the Hokage's office to deliver his mission report. Upon arriving, he found the third Hokage seated at his desk, the familiar pipe in his hand as smoke gently curled around him. Hiruzen looked up, his sharp eyes resting on Kakashi. Ah, Kakashi, welcome back. I trust the mission went well. Kakashi stepped forward, his demeanor calm but respectful, as he began recounting the events of the Wave mission. Yes, Hokage-sama. The mission is complete. However, what was originally a simple crank mission to protect a bridge builder escalated to something far more dangerous. We encountered Zabuza Momochi, a missing nin from Kirigakure, and one of the seven swordsmen of the mist. Hiruzen's eyes narrowed slightly. Zabuza, that complicates things. Kakashi nodded. Indeed, Zabuza was working alongside a young boy named Haku, who possessed an advanced Kekkei Jinkai. Ice release. They were hired by Gato, a wealthy businessman, trying to prevent the bridge's completion to maintain control over the land. He continued, detailing the battles they faced, including the moments where his students had been forced to rise to the challenge. Sasuke was able to unlock his Sharingan during the fight with Haku. And Naruto showed remarkable potential, even tapping into the Nine Tails chakra during a moment of extreme duress. Hiruzen listened carefully, his face grave as Kakashi elaborated on Naruto's surge of power. It was brief, but it was enough to turn the tide of the battle. After the fight, we had time to reflect on what happened, and that's when I discovered Naruto had been secretly training himself to the point of exhaustion. The Hokage raised a brow at this, leaning forward slightly. Secretly training? Elaborate. Kakashi took a breath, recounting the discovery. Naruto was using his shadow clones to push himself in ways that no ordinary genin could. He discovered that when his clones dispel, he gains their memories and experiences, and he'd been using this ability to train at an accelerated rate. However, the downside was that the sheer mental and physical toll was exhausting him. His clones were doing everything from physical conditioning to chakra control exercises, but the accumulated strain was dragging him down. During our regular team training, Hiruzen nodded, a knowing smile playing at his lips. Ah, Naruto, always so reckless. Kakashi smiled slightly under his mask. I had to step in and command him to stop the excessive training, limiting him to only 20 clones at a time for now. I've also focused his training on basic skills, where he needs the most improvement. He has incredible stamina, but his fundamentals are still lagging behind. If he keeps pushing too hard without mastering the basics, he'll plateau quickly. The Hokage's eyes twinkled with amusement. A wise approach. Kakashi, it's good to hear that you found a balance between curbing his recklessness and supporting his growth. Kakashi nodded. He's been listening so far, and I'm confident this method will help him progress without overburdening himself with Naruto. At Team 7's usual training ground, Naruto stood at the center of the clearing, surrounded by 20 identical clones. This time, none of the clones were engaged in physical exercises. Something Naruto had learned the hard way wouldn't benefit him. Kakashi had explained that while the clones could give him experience and muscle memory, they wouldn't improve his physical stamina or strength. On top of that, he'd still feel the mental fatigue of overworking his clones if he pushed them too hard. Naruto had been mortified when Kakashi pointed out how inefficient his earlier training had been, but he was relieved to have figured it out now rather than wasting more time. Tonight's training session was different. Instead of running through his usual ninjutsu drills, Naruto had broken the clones into groups focused on the core basics, starting with tasks that he desperately needed to improve. Naruto himself was overseeing the groups, jumping in occasionally to check their progress. Though the clones had his exact skill set, he had discovered that watching from the outside gave him a unique perspective. He could spot mistakes that he might have missed in the heat of training. The 20 clones were divided into 4 groups, each dedicated to a different aspect of basic shinobi skills. One group was focused on practicing with shuriken and kunai, throwing them at targets placed at different distances. Naruto had always struggled with accuracy, and this was no exception. The clones were working on refining their technique. Everything from the grip to the angle of release. Naruto watched carefully, noticing that some of the clones were overcompensating by gripping the shuriken too tightly. Loosen your grip just a bit there, that's better, he said to a clone who had been struggling. Another group was sparring in pairs, practicing basic taijutsu techniques. Naruto had always been more of a brawler, relying on his stamina and unpredictability, but he knew he needed to refine his technique. The clones were working on maintaining a balanced stance while striking and blocking. Naruto watched closely, noting that some were overcommitting to their strikes, leaving them vulnerable. He stepped in to adjust their posture, reminding them to keep their guard up even while attacking. The third group was focused on chakra control, practicing the tree walking exercise. Each clone was concentrating on maintaining a steady flow of chakra to their feet as they stuck to the vertical surface of a tree. Naruto observed as some clones slipped, losing their balance. He reminded himself to breathe and focus on the flow of chakra, making sure the clones didn't overexert themselves. Steady, don't push too much at once, he advised, feeling the benefits of the exercise even as he watched. The final group was working on something Naruto had long struggled with, his hand seals. He had always been slow when forming hand seals, A major weakness in fast-paced combat situations, the clones were practicing speeding up their hand seals for basic jutsu. Like the transformation jutsu and substitution jutsu, Naruto winced as he noticed some of the clones fumbling through the seals, their fingers clumsy and uncoordinated. Focus speed comes with practice, he encouraged them. Determined to improve this crucial aspect of his ninja skills as the evening wore on, Naruto felt a sense of accomplishment. He wasn't pushing himself to the point of exhaustion, but he was finally honing the basics he had neglected for so long. Even with just 20 clones, the amount of progress he'll make in a single night will be staggering compared to before. For once, Naruto wasn't chasing after Sasuke blindly. He was methodically building his own foundation. One step at a time, he couldn't wait to see how far he could go. Naruto raised his kunai, deflecting a flurry of shuriken that shot out from a nearby bush. His eyes narrowed as he turned toward the source, muscles tense to charge. Just as he was about to move, Sasuke's sharp voice rang out. Naruto, stay in formation. Sasuke's tone was harsh, cutting through the tension in the air. Naruto faltered for a split second, but that pause was all the enemy needed. In an instant, 6 menacing shinobi burst from the undergrowth. Launching an aggressive assault, Naruto managed to weave around the first swing, but a swift kick from one of the attackers sent him tumbling across the forest floor. He scrambled to his feet, but 2 of the enemies were already on him, their movements swift and relentless. Sasuke, meanwhile, was surrounded by 3 opponents, though he was clearly faster than them. The numbers were against him. He ducked, dodged, and countered with sharp precision, but no matter how skilled he was, the sheer volume of attacks began to wear him down. His fists clenched in frustration. After a prolonged struggle, Sasuke found himself overwhelmed, pinned to the ground by the weight of his attackers. Sakura had her own opponent to contend with. Her taijutsu lacked the refinement of her teammates. Each of her defensive moves was countered, and soon enough, she was on the ground, breathless and defeated. Naruto gritted his teeth as he struggled against the 2 enemies holding him down. He thrashed under their weight, but they held firm still. There was no panic in Naruto's eyes, just frustration. Just when it seemed like Team 7 was completely at the mercy of their enemies, Kakashi emerged from the nearby trees, his casual demeanor unchanged as he approached the group. His visible eye crinkled in a familiar smile. All right. That's enough. Kakashi's voice was calm, almost lazy. You can dispel now. At Kakashi's words, the shinobi holding down Naruto and the ones pinning Sasuke and Sakura all vanished in puffs of smoke, revealing their true nature. Naruto sat up, brushing himself off. Clearly unsurprised, Kakashi walked up to the group, hands tucked into his pockets. Well, that went about as I expected. Naruto frowned, looking over at Sasuke. Why did you get 3? I only had 2. Kakashi raised a hand, silencing Naruto's complaints. I told them to attack in numbers according to each of your strengths, but remember, none of you could use ninjutsu. Your clones were at a disadvantage since they can only take a single hit before poofing. That was to make things fair. Sasuke, still irritated, crossed his arms. It didn't feel fair. Kakashi gave a small shrug. In a real situation, you won't always get to fight on or be able to rely on your strongest techniques. You need to learn to adapt. He turned to Sakura, who was still dusting herself off. And Sakura, you need to improve your taijutsu. Your form isn't bad, but you're slow. Naruto's posture stiffened as Kakashi turned to him. And Naruto, you completely broke formation. You managed to defeat one of your attackers, but if they were enemy shinobi, they would not have hesitated to kill you before you had the chance. Naruto frowned. Right. I won't do it again. Kakashi-sensei. Kakashi nodded. All right. Morning training is over. Time for a drink. Mission. Naruto looked over to the clearing where his remaining clones were still training and quickly shouted for them to dispel. His memories flooded in as the clones vanished, each bit of progress adding to his own. Later that day, Team 7 found themselves walking the dogs of the Inuzuka clan for their mission. Naruto, as usual, picked the largest, most unruly dog, which resulted in him being dragged through an active minefield. Kakashi dismissed the team, and Sasuke surprisingly gave a casual "see you tomorrow" before heading off. Naruto, despite his exhaustion, felt a strange sense of accomplishment. The training with his clones had been paying off, and he could feel his skills improving with each day. As Naruto walked away, he noticed something odd, an oddly shaped rock, completely square, sticking out from the ground nearby. He blinked and turned around, pretending to walk off, but when he looked back, the rock was still there. Naruto's eyes narrowed with a dramatic point. Naruto shouted, "That's no normal rock!" In an instant, Konohamaru and his gang popped out from under their haphazard disguise, dramatically revealing themselves. "You got us." Boss Konohamaru grinned, Hands on his hips, want to play ninja with us? Sakura rolled her eyes from the sidelines. Playing ninja? As a ninja seriously, Kanomaru turned to her, sizing her up with a smirk. Hey, is she your girlfriend? Boss Naruto blushed furiously, stammering incoherently before Sakura, with a furious expression, sent a punch crashing into his face, launching him into a nearby fence. Kanomaru's eyes widened as he yelled, "Boss, no!" He turned to Sakura, pointing angrily. "What kind of girlfriend are you?" Before Sakura could respond, Konohamaru was also sent flying with a single punch as she stormed off. Konohamaru and Naruto slowly climbed to their feet. "I don't think she's even human," Konohamaru muttered, rubbing his head. "Did you see how big her forehead is?" Naruto barely had time to react before Sakura spun around, her eyes burning with fury as she chased after the pair. Their sprint through the streets of the village came to an abrupt halt. Konohamaru flew backward as he collided into a tall, imposing figure with dark face paint. The boy with the painted face smirked down at him, lifting him effortlessly by the collar. "Well, what do we have here?" he mused, eyes gleaming mischievously as Konohamaru dangled helplessly in the air. "Put him down." Kankuro, the blonde girl next to him, sighed, her tone casual but edged with warning. She crossed her arms, her two large, fan-shaped pigtails swaying slightly. "You know you'll pay for it later if you keep this up." Her eyes shifted lazily to Konohamaru, clearly uninterested in the confrontation, but aware of what trouble it could bring. Sakura, now calm from her earlier chase, quickly stepped forward in an attempt to diffuse the tension. "I'm really sorry about this," she said, bowing slightly. "We didn't mean for him to run into you." Her eyes flickered to the face paint boy, now revealed as Kankuro, hoping to avoid an incident. Naruto, however, had different ideas. "Hey!" he shouted, anger boiling as he watched Konohamaru struggle. "Put him down right now, or else." Naruto's fists clenched tightly, his knuckles white with the force of his grip. Kankuro's smirk grew wider as he glanced toward Naruto's forehead, noticing the leaf shinobi headband. "Hell, we've still got a few minutes before the person we're waiting for shows up," he said, his voice dripping with amusement. "Why not have some fun with these punks?" Until then, Konohamaru kicked and squirmed in Kankuro's grasp, his small hands tugging uselessly at the arm holding him up. "Put me down, you jerk!" he yelled, his face red with anger. Naruto couldn't take it anymore. "I said, put him down." He sprinted toward Kankuro, eyes blazing with determination. However, just as he was about to reach them, Kankuro shifted his fingers slightly, and Naruto suddenly found the ground pulled out from under him. He was flung into the air, barely managing to land on his feet with a stumble. "What the hell was that?" Naruto shouted, glaring at Kankuro in confusion. Kankuro chuckled, "Leaf ninja wimps, all of you." Sakura stood frozen, analyzing the situation. These shinobi were definitely outsiders, she realized, but why were they in the village? Outsiders causing trouble in the Leaf, even if from an allied village, wasn't something to take lightly. Naruto, however, continued to throw insults. "You better put him down, or I'll—" "Shut up, Naruto!" Sakura snapped, wrapping her arm around his neck in a headlock. "You're being stupid. Threatening them isn't going to solve anything." Kankuro sneered, "I don't like weaklings, and that run over there is the worst of the lot," he said, nodding toward Naruto. At this point, the blonde girl, Temari, sighed heavily, clearly annoyed. "Fine, Kankuro, do whatever you want, but I'm not getting involved in this." Naruto gritted his teeth, about to charge Kankuro again when thwack, a rock suddenly flew through the air, striking Kankuro's hand with precision. The force of the impact made him wince, loosening his grip just enough for Konohamaru to drop to the ground with a soft thud. "Who?" Kankuro growled, turning toward the source of the attack. High in a tree above them, Sasuke sat coolly, arms crossed. His eyes gleamed with confidence as he spoke. "You're a long way from home, aren't you?" Kankuro's expression twisted with irritation. "Arrogant jerks like you are what I hate the most." He reached for the large, wrapped object on his back, tugging at the bindings. "I'll make you regret." "Kankuro, you're seriously going to use Crow for this?" Temari interrupted, her voice tinged with disbelief and worry. "You're going too far." Just as Kankuro began to unravel the object, another figure suddenly appeared, standing upside down on a nearby tree branch. Using the tree-walking technique, his presence was cold and commanding. "Kankuro, stop it. You're an embarrassment to our village," the figure said icily. Sasuke's eyes widened slightly, inwardly stunned. "How long has this guy been here? I didn't even notice him." Kankuro stiffened at the voice, his hand dropping immediately from the now half-unwrapped Crow. "Sorry, Gaara," he stammered, fear evident in his tone. Gaara's gaze remained cold as he stared down at his team. "Have you forgotten why we're here?" he asked sharply, not bothering to wait for an excuse. Kankuro started to protest, pointing toward Naruto, and the others they started it. "Shut up," Gaara cut him off, his voice sharp as ice, "or I'll kill you." Kankuro swallowed hard. The threat clearly not lost on him. He said nothing more as Gaara turned toward the others. "We apologize for any trouble," Gaara said flatly. His tone void of warmth. "We'll be leaving now." As they turned to go, Sakura, still baffled by the encounter, called out, "Wait, what are you doing here? Foreign ninja can't just go around starting fights in other villages. Even if we're allies." Temari, having regained some of her usual casual demeanor, pulled out an ID card. "Relax. We have permission to be here." She explained, "We're here for the Chunin exams." Naruto blinked, tilting his head. "Chunin exams? What's that?" Temari shot him a mocking look. "Seriously, you don't even know that you're clueless." Konohamaru, now standing next to Naruto, piped up eagerly. "The Chunin exams are the tests all Genin have to take to get promoted to Chunin. It's a big deal, boss." As the Sand siblings turned to leave again, Sasuke's voice called out, stopping Gaara once more. "Hey, what's your name?" Gaara paused, turning his head slightly. "Gaara of the Sand," he said in that same neutral, cold tone. His eyes flicked briefly over Sasuke before he asked, "And yours?" "Sasuke Uchiha." Sasuke replied confidently. Naruto, never one to be outdone, grinned and stepped forward. "Bet you're dying to know my name too, right?" Gaara didn't even bother turning fully toward him. "I couldn't care less," he said bluntly, leaving Naruto speechless as he walked away with Kankuro and Temari in tow. With Kakashi in the Hokage's office, a gathering of Jonin had convened. The air was filled with a mix of anticipation and tension as the upcoming Chunin exams were the topic of discussion. Seated at the head of the room, the third Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, calmly surveyed the shinobi before him. His wise, weathered eyes glimmered beneath his hat, though the lines of age and responsibility weighed heavily on his face. "The Chunin exams will commence next week," Hiruzen announced, his voice authoritative yet calm. A murmur rippled through the Jonin in attendance, many nodding in agreement. Some had already taken note of the foreign shinobi arriving in the village in preparation. The Hokage glanced toward three specific Jonin standing toward the front: Kakashi Hitaki, Asuma Sarutobi, and Kurenai Yuhi. "Kakashi, Asuma, Kurenai," he called, his tone shifting to a more direct cadence. "As the Jonin leaders of our newest Genin teams, it's time for you to declare whether or not you'll be nominating your teams for the exams." Each Jonin stepped forward in turn, their expressions calm yet contemplative. Kakashi was the first to speak. "Lord Hokage, I would like to nominate all three of my students for the Chunin exams: Uzumaki Naruto, Haruno Sakura, and Uchiha Sasuke of Team 7. He declared confidently. Next was Asuma. His rugged demeanor softened slightly as he nodded toward the Hokage. "I also wish to nominate my students for the exams: Ino Yamanaka, Shikamaru Nara, and Choji Akimichi of Team 10. Finally, Kurenai stepped forward, her crimson eyes reflecting a quiet confidence. "I would like to nominate my team as well," she said. "Hyuga Hinata, Aburame Shino, and Inazuka Kiba of Team 8. The room was quiet for a brief moment as the Hokage considered the nominations. Suddenly, the quiet was broken by a familiar voice. "Wait, just a moment." It was Irika Yumino, Naruto's former academy teacher, who had been quietly standing in the back of the room. His expression was tense, his concern for his former students evident. "Lord Hokage, I must protest," Irika said firmly, stepping forward. "These Genin, they've only recently graduated from the academy. They haven't been ninja for long enough to be prepared for the Chunin exams." His eyes lingered on Kakashi, his concern especially strong for Naruto, who he felt wasn't ready for such a grueling challenge. "They've barely had time to gain experience in the field. Isn't it too early for them to take this step?" Kakashi's single visible eye gleamed with understanding, but his tone remained steady and calm. "Irika, I understand your concerns," he said, "but they aren't your students anymore. They've grown since the academy. They're ready." Irika, still uneasy, glanced between the Hokage and the other Jonin. He knew Kakashi was right. Technically, they weren't his students anymore, but his bond with Naruto and the others was hard to break. I don't want them to be put in danger." "They're not ready for." Hiruzen exhaled softly, the weight of his position as both a leader and an elder on full display. "Irika," he said gently, "the Chunin exams are a time for young shinobi to prove themselves, to grow, and to face the reality of our world. The Jonin leaders are confident in their students' readiness, and we must trust in their judgment." Irika opened his mouth as if to argue further, but closed it, realizing the futility instead. He bowed respectfully. "I understand, Lord Hokage." With that, Hiruzen nodded, officially noting the nominations from the three. Jonan the meeting proceeded, but Irika's unease lingered, a shadow of doubt clouding his heart meanwhile. Kakashi stood quietly, confident in his team, knowing they were about to embark on one of their most difficult trials they'll have. As young Genin, Kakashi stood in front of his three Genin, his usual laid-back expression masked by the headband that covered his Sharingan. I recommended all three of you for the Chunin exams. He announced. Naruto's face lit up instantly. Kakashi-sensei, you rock, he yelled, launching himself at Kakashi in a full-body hug. Kakashi, however, deftly peeled Naruto off himself with a flick of his wrist, returning to his typical nonchalant stance. Whoever wants to take the exams, sign the application and come to room 301 at the academy. 3 p.m., 5 days from now, that's all. Kakashi finished, eye smiling beneath his mask. Naruto, already lost in his thoughts, grinned wildly. Chunin exams, he giggled to himself, barely containing his excitement. Naruto's mind raced with anticipation, imagining the intense battles that awaited him. Man, I'll get to face that guy with the mummy on his back. What was his name? Kankuro. And then there's this guy with the attitude. Naruto's grin widened as he pictured himself effortlessly defeating them. He could almost see it now, standing atop a mountain of beaten opponents, receiving the Hokage's hat, skipping the rank of Chunin altogether, and becoming the greatest shinobi in Konoha history. Yeah, this is it. I'll show everyone how awesome I am, Naruto thought, clenching his fist in determination. Sasuke, meanwhile, remained silent. Though his face was calm, his mind was buzzing with anticipation. He wasn't focused on Kankuro, but rather Gaara, the red-headed boy with the eerie presence. That guy was different from everyone else they had encountered. Sasuke's eyes narrowed. I have to face him, he thought. The thrill of facing strong opponents ignited a competitive fire in him, but beneath that burned his desire to grow stronger, to close the gap between himself and him. I'll take on anyone, and I'll win. I'm not losing to anyone, especially not him. His gaze shifted to Naruto briefly. Not this idiot either, he smirked. But while Naruto and Sasuke reveled in the thought of challenging opponents and pushing themselves, Sakura remained silent, her heart sinking further with each passing moment. Unlike her teammates, she wasn't eager or excited. In fact, she felt an overwhelming sense of dread. Sakura's gaze dropped to the ground. How can I even think about competing? She wondered. She couldn't keep up with Naruto's rapidly improving skills or Sasuke's raw talent. They were both already far ahead of her, and the gap only seemed to grow wider. Each day Naruto had been improving at an almost frightening pace, thanks to his training with the shadow clones. Even if she didn't show it, she was genuinely impressed by his dedication. And while she would never admit it, she was beginning to feel left behind. Sasuke, on the other hand, was an enigma. He had always been skilled, and the thought of even coming close to matching him felt impossible. Her hands clenched into fists, trembling. What can I do? She thought. I'm not strong. Like theme, a flood of insecurities washed over her, threatening to drown any semblance of confidence she had left. Why am I even here? She asked herself. Sakura glanced at her teammates, who were lost in their own worlds. They looked ready, excited, even. But 5 days, she whispered to herself, her heart heavy. She had 5 days to decide if she could muster up the courage to take on the Chunin exams, or if she was just fooling herself. The days until the exam. Over the past 5 days, Team 7 had pushed themselves in their training, sharpening their skills in preparation for the Chunin exams. Kakashi had dismissed their usual drank missions, allowing them to focus solely on their development. Naruto, in particular, had shown impressive growth, especially in his basic skills. His taijutsu had significantly improved. His movements were sharper and more controlled. Though still not quite on par with Sasuke, his stamina and endurance were already formidable. But now his timing and precision had reached a new level. Even his hand seals, previously clumsy and slow, had become quicker and smoother through constant practice. Kakashi had noticed during their last training session. He had pulled Naruto aside. I'm impressed, Naruto, Kakashi said, a rare seriousness in his voice. Your basics are more than solid now. You're much faster with your hand seals, and your taijutsu has improved significantly. You've put in the hard work, and it shows. But remember, he added with his usual eye smile, the basics are something you can never stop practicing. You'll always need them. Naruto had beamed at the praise, but Kakashi's next words had excited him even more. After the Chunin exams, we'll start focusing on some more advanced skills, but for now, focus on these exams. Knowing you, I'm sure you'll be participating. Naruto, practically bouncing with excitement, had laughed loudly As if I'd miss it, I'm going to be Hokage someday. Remember, I'll crush those exams. His enthusiasm was infectious. But Kakashi just gave his usual eye smile before turning to leave the morning of the exam. It was the day of the Chunin exams, and outside the academy, Naruto and Sasuke stood waiting for Sakura. Naruto was practically vibrating with excitement, bouncing on the balls of his feet as he thought about all the strong shinobi he would face in the exams. Chunin exams. I'm gonna crush everyone, Naruto said to himself, fists clenched in excitement. A few moments later, Sakura finally arrived. Looking slightly distracted, Naruto greeted her with his usual energy. Hey, Sakura, you're late. Sakura smiled apologetically. Right, sorry. Guys, though she had been trying to appear calm, her thoughts were still on the test she was given a few days prior. The third Hokage had put all the rookie genin through one of these tests to appease the worried academy instructor, Iruka, who felt that the rookies weren't quite ready for the Chunin exams. Good morning, Sasuke, Sakura said, her voice tinged with a mix of hope and hesitation. Yeah, Sasuke replied nonchalantly. Though he noticed the slight shift in her demeanor, he didn't press the issue. Instead, turning toward the academy entrance, Naruto followed with his usual enthusiasm, and Sakura walked just behind them. Team 7 entered the academy, making their way up the staircase toward the third floor. After pushing through a small crowd of about a dozen other genin gathered around the classroom marked 301, they saw 2 genin of the Leaf blocking the entrance. Just as they arrived, a boy in a tight green spandex suit, maybe a year older than them, was struck by one of the genin guarding the door, causing him to stagger back. You're taking the Chunin exams, but you can't even get past us, one of the door blockers said mockingly, crossing his arms in front of his chest. Why don't you give up now, before you get hurt, the second added. Laughing smugly, a girl, who appeared to be on the green spandex boys team, stepped forward, attempting to reason with the genin blocking the door. Please, let us through, we're supposed to go in there, she said, but before she could say more, one of the blockers delivered a punch straight to her face. She tumbled to the ground, landing beside her teammate. The door blockers continued antagonizing the genin. Trying to get in the exams will make what we're doing look like a picnic, one of them sneered. Sasuke, who had been observing the situation with mild disinterest, decided it was time to intervene. He coolly walked forward, hands in his pockets, and confronted the pair blocking the door. Real nice speech, Sasuke said casually. Now let us through. The 2 genin in front of the door exchanged glances before Sasuke continued, and while you're at it, drop the genjutsu. We can see through your illusion. We're still on the second floor. Some of the other genin in the crowd mumbled to one another in confusion. What does he mean we're on the third floor? Right, the door blocker smirked. Well, so you noticed the genjutsu? Sasuke turned to Sakura, giving her a quick glance. Why don't you tell them? Sakura, you probably noticed long before I did. After all, you've got the best analytical skills on the team. Sakura blinked in surprise, a small smile creeping on her face at the unexpected compliment. She stepped forward. Yeah, I saw it right away. We're still on the second floor. That sign saying 301 is a fake. With that, the sign above the door flickered, revealing the true number, 201. The crowd of genin murmured in shock. Well, aren't you a smart one, said one of the door blockers, his smile fading. You noticed the illusion without warning. He launched a high kick toward Sasuke. Now, let's see you deal with this. Sasuke reacted instantly, launching his own kick to intercept, but before either of their attacks could connect, a blur of green appeared between them. Rock Lee, the green spandex boy from earlier, had moved with such blinding speed that neither Sasuke nor his opponent had seen it coming. He stopped both kicks with a single hand on each of their legs. Team 7 was shocked. Sakura's eyes widened in disbelief. Wait, that guy's not a weakling, she thought, stunned by how easily Lee had intervened. Sasuke, too, was caught off guard. He blocked my kick effortlessly. Naruto, however, saw something different thanks to his recent taijutsu training. He could now recognize just how fast and skilled this boy truly was. This guy, he's no joke, Naruto thought, realizing that Lee had been holding back at that moment. The girl from earlier approached alongside a boy with striking white eyes, clearly a Hyuga. Hey, the Hyuga said in an unimpressed tone, addressing Lee. What happened to the plan? I thought we were supposed to keep a low profile. Ignoring him, Rock Lee walked straight up to Sakura with a grin on his face. You must be Sakura Haruno, right? My name is Rock Lee. Please be my girlfriend. I vow to protect you with my life. He flashed her a thumbs up and a blindingly white smile. Sakura's face twisted in both confusion and disgust. Definitely not, she replied coldly. Lee faltered, his expression dropping comically. Why? Sakura frowned. Because you're a weirdo. Rock Lee's shoulders slumped, defeated. Meanwhile, the white-eyed Hyuga boy, Neji approached Sasuke. Hey you, he said. Looking Sasuke up and down, what's your name? Naruto, standing to the side, clenched his fists in frustration as Sasuke once again became the center of attention. Sasuke always gets all the attention, he muttered angrily to himself. Sasuke gave Neji a nonchalant look. It's common manners to give your own name first. Neji, ignoring the comment, continued, you're one of the rookie genin, aren't you? How old are you? Sasuke, refusing to give a straight answer, turned and began walking away. I'm not obligated to answer. In the background, Rock Lee and Naruto were both leaning against the wall in their own shared depression. Lee, still feeling the sting of being called a weirdo by Sakura, and Naruto, once again feeling overlooked by everyone. Sakura, realizing the conversation was over, called out to her teammates, come on, you two, let's go with that. Team 7 began climbing the stairs to Team 7 walked through the academy corridors, steadily approaching room 301, the designated location for the Chunin exams. Before they could reach their destination, a voice echoed from behind them, stopping them in their tracks. Sasuke, Uchiha, the entire team turned in mild surprise, eyes drawn upward toward the balcony. Standing there was Rock Lee, the same boy who had effortlessly blocked Sasuke's kick earlier. His determined gaze was locked on Sasuke. What do you want? Sasuke asked, his voice tinged with confusion and irritation. I want to fight you right here, right now, Lee replied, conviction resonating in every word. Without waiting for a response, Lee leapt down from the ledge, landing gracefully in a crouch before Team 7. As he stood, he straightened himself confidently and formally introduced himself. Once again, my name is Rock Lee, and I know you are the Uchiha clan. I want to test how strong the Uchiha really are. Sasuke narrowed his eyes, taking Lee's challenge personally. Fine, I'll show you just how strong I am. However, before they could begin, Lee's gaze drifted toward Sakura. His expression softened into a goofy grin as he once again confessed his love, winking and blowing kisses at her. Hearts seemingly floated in the air with every exaggerated gesture, and Sakura, disgusted, did everything in her power to dodge the flying hearts. Clearly uncomfortable, Naruto, who had been standing quietly on the sidelines, suddenly stepped forward. His face was contorted in frustration, a large tick mark visible on his forehead. It was difficult to say what had annoyed him more, Lee ignoring him completely in favor of Sasuke, just like everyone else, or the fact that Lee was making moves on Sakura, given Naruto's recent efforts in his training and the lack of recognition he'd received aside from Kakashi. It was clear that the first reason was fueling most of his irritation. Sasuke, I get him first, Naruto declared, his voice unwavering. This weirdo is mine. Sasuke glanced at Naruto out of the corner of his eye, his hands slipping back into his pockets, as if to say he wasn't too concerned. Go for it, he said nonchalantly. Sakura opened her mouth, ready to scold Naruto for his usual brash behavior, but then stopped short. Something about the look in his eyes was different this time. There was no trace of his usual childishness or his need to prove himself out of sheer stubbornness. This was determination, pure and unyielding. He wasn't just looking for attention. He wanted to prove something to everyone and to himself. Lee eyed Naruto with mild surprise, intrigued by the seriousness that radiated from him while his primary interest was still Sasuke. Lee couldn't deny the strange pull of Naruto's confidence. Fine, Lee sighed, taking a fighting stance, but I'll deal with you quickly. Naruto stepped forward, closing the distance between himself and Lee until he was just a few meters away. Unlike his usual reckless attitude, Naruto slid into a taijutsu stance, a calmness radiating from him that was unlike anything his teammates had ever seen. His posture was focused, professional, lacking any of the clumsy energy that usually defined him. Sasuke and Sakura exchanged surprised glances. They could tell right away that something had changed. The reason was clear. Naruto's recent training had paid off, and now that his basic skills had improved, he was confident enough to face a skilled opponent without resorting to his usual chaotic tactics. Instead of rushing in with a haphazard attack, he seemed to have a clear plan. Naruto hadn't been in a real fight since his training had begun in earnest. This moment was his chance to prove to his team, and, more importantly, to himself, that he had grown stronger. The air between Naruto and Lee was tense. Both fighters stood still, analyzing one another, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Naruto, feeling the heat of the battle, was the first to move. His patience, already worn thin by the brief wait, boiled over into action. He launched forward with a punch aimed squarely at Lee. However, Lee, with his incredible reflexes, effortlessly batted Naruto's punch aside instead of reacting with surprise. Naruto maintained his calm demeanor. He placed his hands on the ground and spun. Using his momentum to follow up with a kick, Lee easily dodged the attack, tilting his head to the side as if Naruto's effort was beneath him. He even closed his eyes mid-dodge. That was his first mistake. A smirk flickered across Naruto's face as he used his other leg to launch a sudden horse kick straight into Lee's unguarded gut. The impact made Lee stumble back. Eyes widening in surprise, Naruto somersaulted backward, landing smoothly on his feet and sliding into his stance. Once more Lee recoiled, regaining his footing as he stared at Naruto in shock. It appears I underestimated you. My apologies. I will not hold back any longer, but first, what is your name? Naruto grinned wildly, his brows furrowed with a mixture of excitement and determination. The name's Naruto Uzumaki. Remember it, since it's going to be the one to beat you with that declaration. The two fighters met once more in a rapid clash of taijutsu. Lee, moving with blinding speed, initiated a leaf hurricane. His leg spun toward Naruto's head, the force of the kick causing the wind to whip past Naruto's face narrowly. Naruto dodged the attack, feeling the air brush his hair, dangerously close, but Lee's follow-up came too fast. His second kick slipped past Naruto's hastily raised guard and struck him in the ribs, sending Naruto tumbling across the floor groaning. Naruto quickly rose back to his feet, clutching his side in slight pain. What the heck? I had my guard up. How did he get past it? Naruto muttered under his breath. His mind raced, trying to figure out how Lee had bypassed his defense so easily. Teach must have used some ninjutsu. Well, two can play at that game instead of rushing recklessly, as he would have before. Naruto sprinted at Lee with calculated aggression. Lee, anticipating another straightforward assault, readied himself to counter with another kick, but before he could strike, he suddenly felt arms wrap around his torso from behind. Reacting quickly, Lee turned his head slightly and saw it. Another Naruto shadow clones. How impressive, he remarked, slightly caught off guard. However, he easily broke the clone's grip and dodged Naruto's incoming punch before Lee could retaliate. Another clone appeared from Naruto's side, launching yet another attack. Lee dodged and countered, but a third clone popped up, then a fourth. Each time Lee deflected an attack, another Naruto appeared from the periphery, swarming him with relentless assaults. Lee was both impressed and slightly annoyed. This guy, he's better than I thought. On the sidelines, Sasuke had activated his Sharingan, carefully watching the battle. His eyes tracked Lee's movements, noting how effortlessly Lee evaded and countered without using any ninjutsu. It was all pure taijutsu. Unparalleled speed and skill. He's stronger than me. Sasuke frowned as much as it irritated him. He had to admit that Naruto was holding his own in a way he hadn't expected. A small part of Sasuke felt pride for his teammate, though it was immediately overshadowed by frustration. Could Naruto actually be putting up more of a fight than I would back in the fight? Naruto and Lee continued their intense exchange for several minutes. Both fighters grinned despite the bruises beginning to form on their bodies. This was a battle they both were clearly enjoying. Naruto, using his clones and newly improved skills, was holding his own against Lee's incredible taijutsu prowess, but then Lee saw his opening with a swift motion. He launched Naruto into the air, his body spinning helplessly as Lee shot up behind him. The wraps around Lee's arms began unraveling, signaling the initiation of one of his more dangerous techniques, the primary lotus. However, before Lee could complete the move, a paper shuriken flew through the air, striking the wall and pinning his arm wraps in place. Lee stopped immediately, his body tense as he glanced toward the source of the interference. Lee landed on the ground gracefully, stopping the technique before it could hurt Naruto. Meanwhile, Naruto, still airborne, managed to slow his fall using one of his clones. Landing safely a moment later, the air was suddenly filled with an unexpected voice. Lee, a giant turtle, wearing a Konoha forehead protector around its shell, appeared out of nowhere, landing on the ground in front of everyone. Lee's eyes widened in panic as the turtle reprimanded him. That technique is forbidden. Lee, you know better than to use it without permission, the turtle scolded sternly. Lee scratched the back of his head, deeply embarrassed. I'm sorry, Master, I got caught up in the excitement of the fight. Before Lee could continue, a booming voice interrupted. Lee, my guy suddenly appeared in a flash, punching Lee in the head, sending him crumpling to the ground. Guy sensei, Lee exclaimed with teary eyes, looking up to his mentor. Guy crouched down, pulling Lee into one of his infamous, overly emotional embraces. You've disappointed me. But I am still so proud of you, Lee. Naruto, Sakura, and Sasuke watch the bizarre scene unfold, unsure whether to laugh or feel uncomfortable at the overly dramatic display. Tears flowed as Lee and Guy shared a ridiculous and comically exaggerated hug. We shall atone for this by doing 200 laps around the village, Guy declared. Holding Lee close, Sakura, recovering from the absurdity of the moment, interrupted, "What about the exams?" Guy suddenly froze, releasing Lee and scratching the back of his head. I almost forgot about that." He then regained his authoritative tone. "Lee, as punishment for forgetting, you will do 400 laps around the village after the exams." Lee, rather than reacting negatively, smiled brightly and saluted. "Yes, Guy Sensei, I thank you for your kindness." His enthusiasm for such a severe punishment left Team 7 utterly speechless. Guy then turned his attention to Team 7, his eyes studying them curiously. Kakashi's squad, right?" he asked, his demeanor instantly shifting from over the top to cool and calculating. "Did you know Kakashi and I are eternal rivals?" Naruto, Sasuke, and Sakura exchanged skeptical glances. "There's no way you're on par with Kakashi-sensei," Naruto said doubtingly. Even Sasuke looked unconvinced. Guy's grin grew, clearly enjoying their disbelief. "Oh, is that so?" Without warning, he vanished from his spot and reappeared behind them in a flash of movement. The team blinked, startled by his incredible speed. "Still think Kakashi is the only strong one?" Guy teased, flashing his pearly white smile. Naruto gawked at Guy's speed, while Sasuke's eyes narrowed. "This guy, he's insanely fast," having proved his point. Guy waved them off. "Well, we should be going now, Lee. We've got training to do after the exams." Before leaving, Lee turned to Naruto, his expression serious but respectful. "Thank you for the amazing fight, Naruto Uzumaki. I look forward to the next time we meet." Naruto blushed slightly, flustered by the genuine compliment. Thanks, Lee." "Same to you," Naruto replied, feeling a strange mixture of pride and excitement. Lee paused for a moment before adding, "I would like to say I'm the strongest genin from Konoha you will face. But there is one other." His tone shifted, becoming more somber. "Neji Hyuga, my teammate. He's even stronger than I am." Naruto and Sasuke both tensed at the mention of Neji, the boy with the white eyes. They both remembered his cold demeanor back in front of room 201. With that, Lee and Guy took their leave, leaving Team 7 behind to ponder their next steps. Naruto's excitement surged at the thought of another fight. "Man, I can't wait to fight him again," he exclaimed, his usual energy returning. Sasuke, however, was more focused, his mind lingering on Neji. Stronger than Lee, he thought. The challenge was clear in his mind, and his competitive spirit burned hotter. He needed to get stronger if he was going to face opponents like Lee and Neji. Team 7 arrived at the entrance of room 301, where they were surprised to find Kakashi standing outside, as if waiting for them. "Glad you came, Sakura," Kakashi said, his usual nonchalant tone carrying a slight warmth. "For your sake. And those two," he added, nodding toward Naruto and Sasuke. Sakura blinked in confusion. "Why, what do you mean?" she asked. Kakashi explained, "Only groups of 3 are allowed to enter the exam. I thought it was important for you to know that it's not just about individual choices. It's about teamwork. I didn't want the other 2 pressuring you into taking the exam. If you weren't ready, I wanted you to come because you chose to." Sakura took a moment to let his words sink in. Kakashi was looking out for her, making sure she felt ready on her own terms, not just dragged along by her teammates. A small, grateful smile appeared on her face. "Naruto, Sasuke, Sakura," Kakashi said, his voice more serious now, "I'm proud of you. Good luck." He stepped aside, giving them a clear path to the door. "We won't let you down, Sensei," Naruto said confidently, clenching his fist in excitement. With that, the 3 genin walked toward the doors to room 301, their anticipation building. As soon as they opened the doors and stepped inside, they were hit by the intense atmosphere. The room was packed with shinobi from various villages, all older, more experienced, and glaring at them like predators sizing up their next meal. The air felt thick with competition. Sakura paled slightly, her earlier confidence shaken. "I never expected there to be this much competition," she thought nervously. If being scary was one of the tests, then they've already beaten me. The genin inside ranged from teenagers to young adults, making Team 7 look like lost little kids. They were well aware that it was rare for fresh graduates like them to enter the Chunin exams, but before their unease could settle in too deeply, a familiar voice called out, "Hey." Sasuke Ino's voice rang through the tense room as she suddenly appeared behind Sasuke, wrapping her arms around his shoulders in a playful hug. "Where have you been? I missed those broody good looks of yours." Sasuke's face immediately twisted into a look of irritation. Clearly bothered by her sudden invasion of his personal space, back off. Ino, Sakura snapped, stepping up to her crush's defense. Sasuke's mind, Ino Yamanaka man. Ino's always loud and bossy, especially around Sakura. He mused, recalling the rivalry between the two girls that seemed to have started since they were kids. Ino had her long, platinum blonde hair tied back into a high ponytail, her blue eyes sharp as ever. She wore a sleeveless purple outfit, showing off her confidence and bold personality. "Oh, it's you guys." A familiar lazy voice drawled. Shikamaru and Choji from Team 10 approached. Shikamaru had his hands stuffed in his pockets, his usual bored expression plastered on his face. Choji, meanwhile, was munching on a bag of chips, his round face showing no concern about the tension in the room. Shikamaru, Choji, Naruto greeted them, grinning widely. Shikamaru sighed. Yeah, what a drag this is going to be." Naruto laughed. "You haven't changed a bit." Shikamaru, as Naruto looked at his former classmates, he started thinking about their personalities and appearance. Shikamaru Nara, Naruto thought, looking at the boy with the high ponytail who looked like he could fall asleep standing up. "The laziest guy you'll ever meet. He's smart, but man, he hates doing anything that requires effort." Shikamaru's outfit was the same as usual, a simple mesh shirt under a short-sleeved jacket, with the Nara clan symbol emblazoned on it. Naruto's eyes shifted to Choji, and then there's Choji Akimichi, he thought with a grin. Watching Choji munch away on his chips, he's always eating something. But he's a good guy, always thinking about food. Though Choji had his usual round, gentle face, wearing his traditional Akimika-style clothing and a scarf, he looked big compared to the others, not just because of his frame, but also the layers of clothes. As Naruto's thoughts wandered, another voice cut in. "Well, what do you know, looks like the whole gang is back together again," Kiba said as he approached with his small white dog, Akamaru, perched on his head. Kiba looked as cocky as ever, a grin plastered on his face. Behind him were his teammates, Hinata and Shino. Hinata peeked shyly over Kiba's shoulder. "Hi, Naruto," she greeted quietly, her cheeks flushed pink. She twiddled her fingers nervously, barely able to make eye contact. Naruto blinked at her, oblivious to her nerves. "Hey, Hinata," he greeted back, full of his usual energy. Naruto took a quick mental note of the rest of Team 8. Kiba Inuzuka. He's always loud, and he's got a huge ego, but he's cool. I guess. Kiba had wild brown hair and the red fawn markings on his cheeks, wearing his usual fur-lined jacket. Akamaru, his trusty partner, barked from atop Kiba's head. Then Naruto glanced over to Shino. Shino Aburame, still creepy with those sunglasses, and he doesn't talk much, kinda mysterious. Shino was as stoic as ever, his face mostly hidden by his high-collared coat and dark sunglasses, making it hard to read him. Finally, his eyes landed on Hinata, and Hinata, "Hyuga, she's always so quiet around me. I wonder why she's so shy all the time." He shrugged it off, as clueless as ever about her feelings. Hinata, with her short dark hair and soft lavender eyes, seemed even more flustered than usual. Her pale lavender jacket made her look soft and approachable, but her blushing face didn't go unnoticed. Shikamaru glanced lazily toward Team 8 as they made their way over, hands in his pockets, his typical slouch on full display. "So you guys are here too? How what a drag," he muttered. Kiba grinned wide, showing off his fong-like teeth. "Yep, all 9 rookies. Looks like this is going to be fun, at least for those strong enough to make the cut, right?" Sasuke, he shot a cocky smirk toward the Uchiha. Sasuke, ever the cool-headed one, smirked back confidently. "Make sure you don't get overconfident." Kiba chuckled, standing tall with his small white dog, Akamaru, perched on his head. "Just you wait, we've been training like crazy." Naruto, never one to miss a beat, jumped in. "What do you think we've been doing sitting around picking daisies?" Hinata, standing shyly beside Kiba, immediately apologized. "I am sure Kiba didn't mean anything by it." Her soft voice earned a confused glance from Kiba before any further banter could ensue. A voice interrupted. A tall, slender man approached the group with a kind smile. He had long, silver hair tied back, glasses reflecting the light in the room, and wore the standard gray Konoha shinobi vest. His relaxed demeanor stood out amidst the tense atmosphere of the exam room. "Hey, you rookies might want to keep it down a little," he said with a friendly tone. "Take a look around you." At his suggestion, the rookies paused and glanced around the room. Their eyes widened as they realized nearly every genin in the room was glaring at them. Clearly irritated by their childish bickering, the intense stares sent a clear message. The Chunin exams weren't a place for idle chatter. The tension in the room thickened as the weight of the competition settled in on them. Sakura, curious about the kind stranger, asked, "So, is this your first time taking the exam?" Kabuto laughs, rubbing the back of his head, slightly embarrassed Actually, this is my 7th time. The entire group blinks in surprise. 7th, Naruto exclaims, "You must be an expert by now." Kabuto smiles sheepishly. "Yeah, I guess I do know quite a bit," he says. Shikamaru, leaning against the wall, mutters, "Some expert. He hasn't even passed." His tone is full of lazy sarcasm. Kabuto chuckles lightly. "Well, I guess 7th time's the charm," he replies, but Shikamaru only sighs in response. "What a drag. I guess those rumors about how tough the exams are must be true." Then, sensing the growing unease, Kabuto tries to reassure them, "Hey, don't give up hope yet. These exams are definitely tough. But maybe I can help you guys out a little." He reaches into his pouch and pulls out a set of cards. "These are called ninja info cards. I've been gathering intel on candidates for a while now." Kabuto demonstrates by taking one card and spinning it in his hand while channeling chakra. As the card spins, it suddenly lights up, displaying a map. "See, this shows how many genin from each village are participating in this year's exams." Everyone watches intently as Kabuto explains, showing them which villages were represented and how many genin had come from each one. Sasuke, ever focused on what could help him gain an edge, raises an eyebrow and asks, "Can those cards give you information on specific candidates?" Kabuto smirks, sensing the Uchiha's eagerness. "Yes, they can." "Do you have anyone in particular you're curious about?" Sasuke, with a sharp look in his eyes, speaks up. "Gaara of the desert. And while you're at it, Rock Lee." Kabuto raises an eyebrow and chuckles. "Well, it's no fun if you already know their names, but I suppose I can still help." He takes out 2 cards from the stack, giving them a brief spin in his hands while channeling his chakra into them. "All right, let's see what we've got." Sasuke folds his arms and leans in, waiting for the information. As Kabuto looks at the first card, "First up, Gaara of the desert," Kabuto announces as the card begins to display Gaara's details. "He's from the Hidden Sand Village. As you might have guessed, he's part of Team Baki, and his teammates are Kankuro and Temari." Now here's the interesting part. Gaara has completed every mission assigned to him, without a single scratch. He's a bit of an enigma, because his record is flawless. No injuries, no failures. Some even say he's never lost a fight. Sasuke's eyes narrow, his curiosity piqued even further. "No injuries at all?" he asks. Kabuto nods. "Yeah, pretty impressive. Right, rumor has it he's got some special abilities, but there's not a lot of info on him. People from the Hidden Sand keep things pretty tight-lipped." Sasuke takes in the information, intrigued by Gaara's reputation. Kabuto then moves on to the next card. "And now, Rock Lee," he says, glancing over at Naruto, who perks up at the mention of his recent opponent. "Rock Lee's from the Hidden Leaf. Like you guys, he's part of Team Guy, with his teammates being Niji, Hyuga, and Tenten, both very capable shinobi in their own right. As for Lee himself, well, he's a taijutsu specialist, pure physical combat. No ninjutsu or jinjutsu at all." Sasuke reacts with mild surprise. "No ninjutsu or jinjutsu, and he's still that strong?" Kabuto nods. "Exactly, he's a rare one, relying solely on his body. In fact, he's developed an incredible level of speed and power. Through sheer hard work, he may not be able to use ninjutsu, but don't underestimate him. People say he's the strongest taijutsu user of his age." Naruto, listening intently, clenches his fists, remembering how intense their fight was. "Yeah, I can vouch for that," he mutters to himself, earning a glance from Sasuke. Kabuto finishes up the briefing, flicking the cards back into the stack. "So there you have it, Gaara of the desert, and Rock Lee, 2 of the toughest genin you'll face in these exams." Sasuke smirks, his interest piqued even more. "Interesting, very interesting." Suddenly, a group of sound ninja, noticing Kabuto's information gathering, approaches him with hostile intent. The lead sound ninja glares at Kabuto. "You think you're so clever, don't you? With those little cards of yours." Without warning, the sound ninja charges forward, attempting a surprise attack. Kabuto dodges swiftly, but just as he's about to counter, his vision begins to blur, staggering slightly. He quickly realizes that despite avoiding the physical blow, the attack somehow affected him. Kabuto grips his head, blinking rapidly to clear his vision, while the surrounding rookies, including Team 7, watch in confusion and surprise. Sasuke narrows his eyes, realizing the sound ninja's technique must be more dangerous than it initially seemed. Naruto, on the other hand, tenses up, ready to jump into the fray. But before anything more can happen, a commanding voice cuts through the tension. "Enough." Everyone turns to see a tall, imposing man with scars on his face and wearing a black flak jacket enter the room. His very presence causes the room to fall silent. The man steps forward, glaring at the participants. "I'm Ibiki Marino, the proctor for the first test of the Chunin exams." He announces. His voice is cold and authoritative. "And let me make one thing very clear. From this point on, there is to be no fighting between candidates. No matter how tense things get, the room tenses as Ibiki continues, his presence as the head of Konoha's torture and interrogation unit unnerving many of the participants. "You may think you're strong or smart," he says, his eyes scanning the room, "but let me assure you, I'm your worst nightmare from here on out, so if you don't want to be disqualified right now, you'll follow my rules to the letter." Naruto swallows hard, feeling the pressure already weighing on him. The other rookies, including Sakura and Sasuke, look equally tense. The threat of disqualification hangs heavy over the room, and it's clear that Ibiki isn't someone to be messed with now. Ibiki continues, "We're moving on to the first part of the exam. It's going to be a written test." Naruto's face turns pale. "Written test?" he exclaims in horror. Ibiki's stern gaze swept over the room as he addressed the genin. "Before we begin, hand in your application forms," he commanded. "You will all be assigned a seat for the written test." The written test. Ibiki's voice cut through the murmur of anxious whispers, commanding the room's attention. "Now that I have your attention, let's go over the specifics of this exam." The exam operates on a point reduction system. You start with a total of 10 points for every question you get wrong. 1 point will be deducted from your score. For example, if you miss 3 questions, your final score will be 7. Naruto's eyes widened as he thought to himself, "And if I miss 10, my final score will be 0. Teams will pass or fail based on the total scores of all 3 members." Ibiki continued, causing a collective gasp of shock. Sakura's face reddened with frustration as she turned to glare at Naruto. Already anticipating the struggles he would face, Ibiki's tone grew more serious as he elaborated on the next rule. "The sentinels around the room are here to watch for any cheating. Each time they catch someone cheating, 2 points will be subtracted from the culprit's score. Be warned, their eyes are extremely sharp. If you're caught cheating 5 times, you'll be dismissed before the tests are even scored. Anyone foolish enough to be caught cheating by the sentinels doesn't deserve to be here." The room fell silent as the weight of Ibiki's words settled in. Sakura and Sasuke's faces tightened with concern, while Naruto's face turned pale. He pictured his teammates glaring at him with disappointment, imagining the worst-case scenario. And finally, Ibiki said, his voice dropping to a low, ominous tone, "The last question will be given out only 15 minutes before the end of the exam. You have a total of 1 hour to complete the test." Understood. A chorus of nervous confirmations echoed through the room. Ibiki's stern gaze swept over them all. "Begin." Ibiki's command signaled the start of the exam, and the room was filled with the sound of rustling papers and scribbling pens as the genin started their test, each one bracing themselves for the challenge ahead. Naruto's heart raced as he scanned the test questions, his mind spiraling with panic. The exam papers in front of him seemed like they were written in a foreign language, each question more impossible than the last. He slumped forward, hands gripping his hair in frustration. As he nervously glanced around, everywhere he looked, other genin were scribbling furiously, answers flowing from their pens as if the questions were common sense. "How are they doing this?" Naruto thought, eyes wide with disbelief. "I can't even make sense of the first one, let alone the rest of them." He pressed his forehead against the desk, trying to think of some way, any way, out of this. Then a flicker of hope crossed his mind. "Wait, what about my clone's memory retaining method?" Naruto thought, his heart beating faster. "If one of my clones figures out the answers, I'll know them too once it dispels. But how am I supposed to pull that off without the sentinels catching me?" As his gaze shifted to the sentinels stationed around the room, their sharp eyes scanning the candidates like hawks, an idea suddenly clicked into place. A wide grin slowly spread across Naruto's face as a plan began to form. "That's it," he whispered to himself, confidence surging through him. Carefully, Naruto slid his hands under the desk, fingers weaving into the familiar signs for his shadow clone jutsu. With a quiet poof of smoke, a clone formed, small, silent, and unnoticed by the sentinels. Naruto cast a quick glance at the examiners. None of them seemed to notice a thing. Hinata, seated beside him, caught sight of the subtle movement, but merely widened her eyes in surprise. Her veins pulsed slightly around her eyes as she activated her Byakugan. Though Naruto didn't understand what that meant, concern flickered across his mind for a brief moment, wondering if she was okay, but he quickly dismissed it. Focusing back on the task at hand, this was no time to get distracted. There was another quiet poof. A moment later, a tiny spider crawled onto Naruto's desk, sporting a tuft of spiky yellow hair identical to his own. The tiny creature skittered across the paper, its mission clear: to reach Sakura's desk, copy her answers, and return without being noticed. Naruto held his breath, his heart thudding in his chest as he watched the spider scuttle across the room. He glanced nervously at the sentinels, but none of them seemed to notice the tiny clone making its way through the sea of feet. Hinata, though, had caught sight of the strange spider with Naruto's trademark yellow hair, but only smiled softly before turning her attention back to her paper. Naruto exhaled in relief, silently thanking her for keeping quiet with Naruto's spider clone. The spider clone darted across the floor, navigating its way through a maze of trembling feet. Its tiny legs moved quickly, dodging sudden stomps and accidental kicks as it worked its way towards Sakura's desk. Halfway there, the clone found itself face-to-face with a tiny insect, a real bug, crawling in the opposite direction. They both paused, staring at each other in a silent confrontation before parting ways, each focused on its own mission. Finally, the spider reached Sakura's desk, climbing up the leg of the table and onto her paper. Its tiny eyes gleamed with satisfaction as it began copying down the answers. However, one of the questions was blocked by Sakura's arm. The spider hesitated for a moment before bravely nudging her arm, hoping she would shift it aside, but instead of moving it, Sakura let out a startled squeal with a sharp slap. She crushed the spider under her hand, causing the entire room to glance her way. Sakura quickly cleared her throat, her face flushed with embarrassment. "Sorry, I just saw a spider," she mumbled awkwardly. Thankfully, the sentinels resumed their watch after a brief pause, seeming satisfied with her explanation. When Sakura lifted her hand, she blinked in surprise at the empty spot where the spider had been. Realization dawned on her, and her face flushed even more. "Wait a minute, was that a Naruto clone?" she thought, her eyes widening as she recalled the odd tuft of yellow hair on the spider's head. A small smile tugged at her lips as she shook her head in amusement. She glanced over at Naruto, who was stifling laughter behind his hand, his eyes watering with the effort to stay quiet. "Sorry, Naruto," she thought, "but at least you're trying to be clever for once." She paused, her gaze moving over the test questions again. "These questions are impossible. There's no way most people here can answer these on their own." Sasuke, seated across the room, had already come to a similar conclusion. His Sharingan was activated, his red eyes tracking the movements of the other genin as he discreetly copied their answers by reading their pen strokes as the time ticked down. The tension in the room mounted. Just then, Ibiki's voice boomed, commanding everyone's attention. "All right, listen up." Ibiki's voice cut through the murmurs, instantly silencing the room. "There are now 15 minutes left in this exam. It's time for the 10th question." The atmosphere grew even more charged as the genin all shuddered in anticipation. They braced themselves for the final challenge, their minds racing with worry and doubt. What would this final question be? Ibiki's sharp eyes scanned the room before continuing. "You have a choice," he began, his voice carrying a sinister edge. "You can choose to take the final question or not." Confused murmurs broke out across the room. Why would anyone choose not to take the question if it meant failing the exam? Ibiki's smirk deepened, the sight unsettling to the genin. "If you choose not to take the question," he explained, "your final score will be 0. That means your entire team fails." The room fell into a tense silence as Ibiki continued. "If you do choose to take the final question and get it wrong, you will be banned from ever taking the Chunin exams again. You will remain genin forever." Kiba stood up, slamming his hands on the desk. "What kind of rule is that? It's completely unfair." Ibiki didn't flinch. "Unfair, maybe, but I'm the proctor of this exam, and what I say goes. The ninja world isn't fair, and you better get used to that if you want to survive." The ruckus that followed was even louder. Genin all around the room began shouting, expressing their disbelief and anger. The idea of being stuck as a genin for life was horrifying, especially for those with high ambition. Sasuke's eyes narrowed, and Sakura clenched her fists in frustration, while Naruto's face went even paler. A heavy, oppressive silence settled over the room as the weight of Ibiki's words sank in. Slowly, one by one, genin began raising their hands. The fear of failure, of being stuck as a genin forever, was too much for some to bear as they stood and filed out of the room, their teammates trailing behind. Some shot looks of disdain at the one who had raised their hand. Others seemed more understanding, resigning themselves to their fate. Sakura sat in her seat, her mind racing. She looked over at Naruto, who was visibly struggling with the decision. Why isn't he raising his hand? She thought frantically. No one would blame him if he did. If Naruto fails, he'll never achieve his dreams. I can't let his dreams die because of us. I should raise my hand. Her hand twitched, ready to shoot up and save Naruto from this impossible choice. But just as she was about to move, she froze in shock as Naruto's arm, suddenly raised high into the air. Sasuke glanced over, a mix of understanding and annoyance in his eyes, but before he could process the situation fully, Naruto slammed his hand onto the desk with a loud bang. Standing up in defiance, as if some stupid question could scare me, Naruto yelled, his voice full of determination. Don't underestimate me. A ripple of surprise and admiration spread through the room. Naruto's outburst, idiotic as it might have seemed, sparked a wave of confidence among the remaining genin. One by one, those who had been on the verge of quitting lowered their hands, determined to stay in the game. Ibiki's smirk returned as he surveyed the room. No one else raised their hand. The tension hung thick in the air, everyone waiting with bated breath for what came next. Well, if that's everyone who's staying, Ibiki paused dramatically, letting the anticipation build. Congratulations, you pass. For a moment, the room was dead silent as the words sank in. Then confusion and disbelief took over. Wait, what about the 10th question? Someone called out, voicing the question on everyone's mind. Ibiki chuckled, crossing his arms. The 10th question was whether or not you would take the 10th question. You see, this exam wasn't just about answering questions. The first 9 questions were designed to test your information gathering skills, to see how well you could work under pressure. He paused, letting the lesson sink in before continuing. But the 10th question was about making tough decisions. As shinobi, you'll face situations where you'll have to make choices that could mean the difference between life and death, success and failure. The ability to make those decisions without fear, to put the mission above your personal feelings, is what we were testing. Those who were too afraid to take the chance, well, they don't belong in the Chunin ranks. The room was filled with a mix of relief, exhaustion, and newfound respect for the test's cunning design. As the genin began to process the fact that they had passed, the atmosphere started to lighten, until a sudden crash broke the calm. A kunai shot through one of the windows, embedding itself in the wall with a large, billowing flag attached to it. The fabric unfurled dramatically, revealing bold lettering that read, Second Exam Proctor. The sexy Anko Mitarashi. A figure appeared in the shattered window, a smirk playing on her lips. My name's Anko Mitarashi, she announced loudly, and I'm the proctor of the next exam. She jumped down, landing in front of the assembled genin, her presence commanding attention. Anko looked around the room, taking in the remaining candidates with a critical eye. Her gaze flicked to Ibiki, who was watching her with a stoic expression. Anko raised an eyebrow, her smirk widening. Not bad, Ibiki, but I think you're losing your touch. There's still a decent number of them left. Ibiki shrugged, unfazed. Maybe this year's batch is just exceptional. Anko chuckled darkly, her eyes glinting with a dangerous gleam. Well, it's fine. My exam will cut the candidates by more than half. The room, which had just begun to relax, tensed up again. The remaining genin stared at Anko with a mix of fear and determination, wondering what horrors awaited them in the second exam. The third exam room was an enormous, dimly lit hall with high ceilings and cold, stone walls that echoed the faintest sounds. It had a brutal, utilitarian feel, as though the space was designed purely for combat. In the center of the room lay a large, rectangular arena, its floor made of hard, cracked stone, worn down by countless battles fought here over the years. At the far end of the chamber, a massive stone carving of a shinobi hand sign stood as a monumental symbol of the village's traditions and the trials the contestants would soon face. This emblem loomed over the room, a constant reminder of the weight of the Chunin exams. Balconies lined the sides of the room, where exam proctors, important figures, and the other contestants could stand and observe the matches. Below, the silence was thick, broken only by the subtle clinking of shinobi gear and the quiet murmurs of the genin, who were all acutely aware that this room was where their skills would truly be put to the test. The 21 genin who had survived the brutal forest of death stood lined up in the center of the third exam room, the gravity of their accomplishment beginning to sink in. These were the ones who had proven themselves capable in the second exam, the ones strong and resourceful enough to make it through the deadly trials of the forest. Naruto, standing at the front of his team's line, stole a glance back at Sasuke. His teammate had been unusually quiet since their ordeal, grimacing and clutching at his neck every so often. We made it through the forest of death, Naruto thought, recalling the events that led them to this moment. All things considered, we probably would have done well if we hadn't run into that incredibly powerful shinobi. Forest of death flashback. Naruto's thoughts wandered back to the beginning of the exam after the initial instructions were given. They had learned that the test involved collecting both a Heaven and Earth scroll from opposing teams. We get one, and we have to fight for the other, Naruto recalled as soon as they entered the forest. Sasuke had suggested using clones to scout ahead. Naruto had grumbled in response. Irritated that Sasuke had spoiled his plan, I was going to do that. Anyway, you ruined the surprise, he muttered, but still summoned a dozen shadow clones and had them spread out to search for other teams. Team 7 moved cautiously through the dense foliage, inching closer to the tower. When Naruto excused himself for a bathroom break, walking a short distance away from his teammates, he noticed the telltale rustling of bushes nearby. Trusting his instincts, he quickly used his shadow clone transformation technique, an increasingly familiar trick, and pretended to take a leak. Suddenly, an enemy genin leaped from the bushes in an attempted ambush. But Naruto's clone had anticipated the attack and countered it perfectly. He sent a clone to retrieve Sasuke and Sakura together. They managed to take down the enemy genin. But to their disappointment, he didn't have the scroll they needed. Sakura reasoned that he had probably been sent ahead to scout and ambush solo, hoping to steal their scroll. But Naruto was still on high alert. Soon after one of his scouting clones returned. Naruto, perplexed, face-bombed. Why didn't you just dispel? He asked the clone, who huffed and replied, Teach, that's why. Before tossing something toward the original, Naruto caught the object midair, and his eyes widened. It's the scroll we need. Well done. Me, he exclaimed. His clone immediately protested. No, it's not you. It's me. Sasuke quickly cut in, asking how the clone had obtained the scroll. Easy. The clone smirked. There were a few teams fighting each other, and I just happened to notice one of their scrolls lying on the ground, so I swiped it with their required scrolls in hand. Team 7 set off for the tower, feeling more confident than ever, but their relief was short-lived. Out of nowhere, they were caught in a fierce gust of wind that scattered the teams. Separated and dazed, Naruto found himself face-to-face with a massive snake. He barely managed to dodge its attack as it lunged, attempting to swallow him whole. After summoning a few clones, Naruto managed to defeat the beast, but the adrenaline coursing through his veins left him rattled. He raced through the trees, desperately searching for Sasuke and Sakura. When he finally found them, they were locked in combat with a terrifyingly strong shinobi, a snake-like figure with an eerie presence. Naruto threw himself into the fight, but he quickly realized they were outmatched. He remembered little after that. The shinobi had hit him in his gut before his consciousness began slipping away. When Naruto awoke, Sasuke had been bitten on the neck by that creepy shinobi. Sakura apparently had been watching over both of them while they were unconscious, but she had been ambushed by a team of sound ninjas. She told him later that Rock Lee had intervened to protect her, only to be defeated as well. Even Team 10 had shown up to help, but they too were overwhelmed in the end. It had been Sasuke, marked and changed, who had defeated their attackers. Tsich. Always Sasuke, that bastard, Naruto thought, feeling both frustration and relief. The rest of the exam had been relatively uneventful for them. They had made it to the tower, dealt with a few small skirmishes, and opened their scrolls, only to have Iruka appear from inside them. That moment had been a welcome surprise, a rare moment of comfort amid the chaos. But now, standing here in the third exam room, Naruto's attention snapped back to the present as the Hokage cleared his throat. Drawing the attention of every genin in the room, the Hokage stood tall before the gathered genin, his gaze sweeping over the eager yet cautious faces. His voice was calm, yet commanding as he began. Congratulations to you all for passing the second exam. The third examination is about to commence, but before we move forward with the details of this final phase, I want to speak about something important. It concerns the underlying reason behind the Chunin exams. The room, filled with tension from the trials they had endured, fell into a hushed silence. Every genin present was curious. Most had never considered that the exams had any deeper meaning beyond ranking up in the shinobi system. Why do you think the Chunin exams are being held with the joint collaboration of the allied nations? The Hokage paused, letting the question linger in the air, challenging the young shinobi to think beyond what they knew. After a few moments, he continued, on the surface, it seems to promote friendship and cooperation among the allied nations, to raise the standard of our shinobi through competition. However, his voice grew more serious. The true nature of the Chunin exams is much more complex. Many of the genin furrowed their brows in confusion, leaning forward slightly, paying even closer attention. The Chunin exams are, in fact, a controlled version of war between our villages, the Hokage explained, his tone steady but grave. While it serves to evaluate the potential of shinobi candidates to rise to the rank of Chunin, It is also a political tool. Through these exams, the allied villages test each other's military strength. Without open conflict, it allows us to gauge the prowess and tactical abilities of our shinobi, the next generation of warriors who may one day lead their villages. Naruto blinked in surprise, and many of the genin around him exchanged uncertain glances. The thought of the exams being more than just a stepping stone to becoming chunin hadn't crossed their minds. The Hokage continued. Each of your villages is represented here. By showcasing your abilities, you're not only proving your own worth, but also the strength of your village. The potential for recruitment, alliances, and even deterrence are all factors weighed by our leaders as they watch these battles. It's an intricate dance of power that balances military strength with diplomacy. The weight of the Hokage's words began to sink in, and the mood in the room shifted. This was not just about becoming chunin. This was about how their actions would reflect on their homes, their nations. Do not misunderstand, however, the Hokage said, his voice softening slightly. While the chunin exams serve as a way for our villages to assess one another, the exam's primary purpose still remains: to find those among you who possess the qualities necessary to become chunin. You are being tested not only for your combat ability, but for your leadership, decision-making under pressure, and your ability to carry out complex missions. The Hokage's eyes scanned the genin once more. To become a chunin means more than just becoming stronger. It means leading others into dangerous situations. It means carrying the responsibility of lives on your shoulders and making decisions that could impact your village's future. The room had grown even quieter as the genin took in the gravity of what the Hokage was saying. This exam was about more than just power. It was about how they would carry the burdens of war, diplomacy, and leadership in the world they lived in. In these exams, you are not just fighting for yourselves, the Hokage finished. You are representing your village. The results of these battles will shape your future and the future of your homeland. Remember this well as you proceed to the next stage of the exam. The genin were left to absorb the weight of his words, fully understanding now that the chunin exams were not just a test of their abilities, but a stage for something much larger. Before the Hokage could continue explaining the details of the upcoming exam, a soft cough echoed from the side of the room. The sound came from a tall, lanky jonin with pale skin and dark hair, his eyes heavy with a hint of fatigue despite his sickly appearance. There was a sharpness in his gaze that hinted at the experience and skill lying beneath his frail exterior. This was Hate Gecko, known for his talent with the sword and his responsibility as the proctor for the final stage of the chunin exams. Pardon the interruption, Lord Hokage, Hate said in a raspy voice, bowing respectfully, but if I may, I'd like to explain the details to the candidates. After all, I'm the proctor for the third exam. The Hokage gave Hate an understanding smile and nodded. Of course. Hate, the floor is yours. Hate gave the gathered genin a moment to absorb the weight of his words, his tired gaze flickering across their faces, many showing signs of shock and uncertainty. He allowed a small pause before delivering the final blow. And just so you're all aware, Hate continued, his voice carrying a steely edge, the preliminary rounds will begin. Right now the room erupted with reactions. Shocked gasps, widened eyes, and quiet murmurs of disbelief rippling through the rows of young shinobi. Naruto's jaw dropped as his body tensed. Right now, he blurted, echoing what many of the others were thinking. Sakura bit her lip nervously, already worrying about Sasuke, who looked calm on the surface but was silently grimacing, a hand hovering near the curse mark on his neck. He wasn't ready for this. Not yet. Meanwhile, Kiba groaned in frustration. Akamaru, whimpering softly on his shoulder, are you serious? Kiba muttered, clearly rattled by the suddenness of it all. He wasn't the only one. Several of the other genin looked just as unprepared, their exhaustion from the forest of death still evident in their stances, but Hate didn't falter, his expression unchanging. This is part of the exam. You'll need to be ready for anything at any time. Without warning, the life of a shinobi is no different. The pressure of his words hung over the room, and while many of the genin looked nervous or unsettled, there was also a growing sense of determination in the air. They had made it this far, and no one was willing to give up now. Not after enduring the hardships of the second exam. Hate coughed lightly, clearing his throat before delivering his next instructions. If anyone wishes to withdraw, now is the time to do so. Otherwise, the preliminary rounds will commence immediately. Just as the weight of Hayate's words settled over the room, a hand shot up From the line of Jinin, "I think I'll withdraw," Kabuto announced, his tone calm but carrying a hint of exhaustion. Naruto spun around and shot Kabuto. "What are you talking about? You've come this far." Kabuto gave a weary smile. Adjusting his glasses, "I've already taken part in several exams. And I've been through a lot in this one already. My body's not in the best shape. And I think I've reached my limit. No point in pushing myself too hard." "Right?" Hate simply nodded, not particularly surprised. "Very well, you're free to go," he said, his voice retaining its usual hoarse tone. Kabuto nodded back gratefully. "Good luck to the rest of you," he said before turning to leave. As he walked out of the room, Naruto clenched his fists, feeling a pang of disappointment. He had looked up to Kabuto for his experience, but now he was leaving without even giving the preliminaries a shot. As Hate prepared to continue his explanation, he paused for a moment, realizing he had forgotten an important detail before. "We move on," he rasped. "I forgot to mention. Moving forward, you'll be fighting as individuals. These rounds will not be based on your teams anymore." The announcement took some genin by surprise, while others appeared undeterred, their expressions hardening with renewed focus. Suddenly, a sharp gasp broke through the tension. Sasuke, standing in the line with his team, grabbed his shoulder in obvious pain, his face contorting as if struggling to maintain control. Naruto whipped around, concern written across his face. "Sasuke?" Naruto asked, confused and worried. Sakura stepped forward, her own face filled with fear. "Sasuke, you can't keep pretending you're okay. That mark, it's making you act up." Her voice trembled with both anger and desperation. Naruto blinked in confusion. "Mark?" he thought to himself. "What mark?" Sasuke gritted his teeth, pushing through the pain. "Shut up, Sakura, I'm not quitting." Sakura's frustration boiled over. "You have to. You're going to hurt yourself," she said, her voice rising. "If you won't do it, then I'll tell them myself." She turned to raise her hand, ready to alert the proctors, but before she could, Sasuke's hand shot out and grabbed her wrist firmly. His grip, though not painful, was enough to stop her in her tracks. His eyes burned with stubborn defiance. "No," he said, voice low but determined. "You're not telling anyone. I don't care about becoming a Chunin. That doesn't matter to me anymore. I'm in this exam to prove one thing, that I'm strong." Naruto's fist clenched, anger rising in his chest. "Sasuke, you jerk, don't treat Sakura like that. She's only trying to help you." But Sasuke cut him off, locking eyes with Naruto. His expression was intense, almost cold. "Naruto," he said, his voice calmer now, but filled with purpose, "you're one of the people I want to fight." Naruto froze, his anger replaced by shock. For a moment, everything seemed to fall silent. Sasuke's words hung in the air, heavy with tension, as Naruto tried to comprehend what his teammate had just said. Preliminaries begin. Hate, observing the tension between the teammates, waited for the moment to pass before clearing his throat and addressing the room. Once again, his raspy voice cut through the atmosphere. "It's time to begin," he announced, causing the room to quiet down. As the genin turned their attention back to him, "The preliminary matches will be conducted in a tournament style. Unknown battles. This will test not only your combat skills, but your strategy, adaptability, and endurance." A murmur spread through the group as the gravity of his words set in. The genin were now sizing up their competition, knowing that the next few hours could determine the course of their futures. Hate continued, "Since there are now an even number of candidates, 20 of you remain. There will be 10 bouts in total. Each match will be between 2 candidates, and the winner will proceed to the third and final exam." The announcement hit the genin hard, the realization that their fate would now depend on individual combat was enough to stir both excitement and anxiety. Among them, some clenched their fists in determination, while others darted nervous glances at their potential opponents. Naruto's eyes scanned the room, lingering on Sasuke. He could feel the tension still radiating from his teammate Unknown. Naruto thought, "I guess this is where we see who's really the strongest." Hayate's expression turned serious as he continued his explanation. "The battles will be no holds barred. Each participant will fight until their opponent is unconscious, dead, or admits defeat. There are no restrictions on the techniques you use. But killing is not the goal of this exam. However, should you die, it's your own fault." The weight of his words hung heavily in the air, casting an ominous silence over the genin. Naruto's eyes widened slightly. "No holds barred." The stakes of the exam just skyrocketed. He glanced around at the other candidates, each of them tense, their eyes sharp with anticipation and worry. After letting that information settle in, Hate motioned to the wall behind him, where a large screen suddenly lit up. The electronic scoreboard flickered to life, and Hate stepped aside to give them a full view of it. "This scoreboard," he explained, "will randomly select 2 names at a time. The 2 chosen will face each other in battle." The room buzzed with nervous energy as the genin stared at the screen, waiting to see who would be the first to fight. Each name on the board represented a potential opponent and a potential threat. Once the names appear, those two will come down to the arena below and begin their fight immediately. Hade added, his voice steady despite the obvious tension in the room. The anticipation was palpable as the scoreboard began to spin. The names of all the remaining genin flickering rapidly across the screen. Everyone held their breath, waiting to see whose names would be called first. The scoreboard's flickering names came to a sudden and dramatic stop. The first two names appeared in bold letters: Sasuke Uchiha versus Akato Yoroi. The room fell into a hush, everyone turning to glance at Sasuke, who stared at the screen, determination burning in his eyes. He let out a small grunt, ignoring the pain still lingering in his shoulder from Orochimaru's cursed mark. Sakura looked worried, but Sasuke's mind was focused on one thing. He couldn't afford to lose here, not in front of Naruto, not in front of anyone. Hate stepped forward. Sasuke Uchiha and Akato Yoroi, please come to the arena. Sasuke calmly walked toward the balcony's edge, glancing down at the large stone floor of the arena below. Yoroi, a rather mysterious shinobi with dark hair and a mask covering most of his face, already stood waiting. He had a confident air about him. His eyes narrowed at Sasuke, as if sizing him up. Sasuke descended into the arena, jumping down to land gracefully on the stone floor. He could feel the weight of everyone's eyes on him, especially Naruto's, who watched from above, his fists clenched ready. Hade asked, looking between both contestants. Sasuke's gaze was fixed on his opponent. He nodded. Yoroi, his expression unreadable under his mask, merely grunted in acknowledgement. Begin. Hade called out, jumping back to give them space. Yoroi wasted no time in rushing towards Sasuke. He moved swiftly, his hands glowing faintly with a chakra-based technique. Sasuke immediately jumped back, dodging the initial attack. Yoroi's hand missed Sasuke's face by inches, but Sasuke quickly realized something strange. His body felt sluggish, weaker than usual. The cursed mark pulsed at his neck, still dormant, but clearly affecting him. Yoroi came at him again, aiming to grab him. Sasuke attempted to counter, aiming a punch at Yoroi's midsection, but Yoroi managed to catch Sasuke's arm with his chakra-infused hand. A strange sensation immediately washed over Sasuke as Yoroi's technique took effect. He was draining Sasuke's chakra. Sasuke's eyes widened in shock as he felt his strength being sapped away. Yoroi's hand glowed brighter as the chakra-draining ability intensified. You're already finished, Yoroi sneered, tightening his grip. Sasuke gritted his teeth, feeling his energy rapidly depleting. He had to think fast as Sharingan still wasn't active, and with the curse mark constantly threatening to take over, he was fighting on uneven ground. Damn it, Sasuke cursed under his breath, realizing he couldn't afford to let this drag on. Desperation lit a fire in him, and in a moment of quick thinking, Sasuke grabbed Yoroi's wrist with his free hand and performed a quick maneuver, kicking off the ground and twisting in midair to land a powerful spinning kick to Yoroi's face. The blow connected, sending Yoroi staggering backward. Sasuke landed gracefully, clutching his arm where Yoroi had grabbed him. His chakra reserves were drained, but he refused to show weakness. He had to end this quickly. Yoroi, now visibly angry, rushed at Sasuke again, but this time Sasuke was ready, drawing on his remaining strength. Sasuke leapt into the air and unleashed the lion combo, the same technique Lee had tried using on Naruto. He delivered a series of rapid punches and kicks, ending with a powerful drop kick that slammed Yoroi into the ground with brutal force. Yoroi hit the ground hard, the impact echoing throughout the room. Sasuke landed lightly on his feet, breathing heavily but standing tall. Yoroi, unable to get up, lay motionless on the ground. Hade stepped forward, checking Yoroi's condition. After a moment, he raised his hand. Winner, Sasuke Uchiha. The room was silent for a beat, then filled with murmur. Sasuke stood there, his body trembling slightly from the exertion. He glanced up at Naruto, who was watching intently from the balcony. The battle had taken its toll, but Sasuke had won without succumbing to the cursed mark. As he walked back toward his team, Sakura ran up to him, concerned. Sasuke, I'm fine. He cut her off, his voice steady but strained. He glanced at Naruto, who nodded silently, acknowledging the strength Sasuke had shown. For now, Sasuke had triumphed, but the ominous presence of the cursed mark still loomed over him. Before the next match could commence, a group of medical ninja hurried into the arena. They quickly approached Yoroi, who was still lying unconscious from Sasuke's relentless attack. With efficient practiced movements. They lifted him onto a stretcher, carefully carrying him out of the arena to receive further treatment. As they began to leave, one of the medical ninja turned to Sasuke, who was standing a bit unsteadily, clearly drained from the battle. "You'll need treatment as well," the medic said, gesturing for Sasuke to follow them before Sasuke could respond. Kakashi suddenly appeared at his side, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Don't worry about Sasuke," Kakashi said, his eye crinkling into a smile beneath his mask. "I'll take care of him myself." The medical ninja hesitated for a moment, glancing between Kakashi and Sasuke, seeing the confidence in Kakashi's demeanor. They eventually nodded and returned their focus to Yoroi, who was now being carried out of the room. Kakashi gently guided Sasuke away from the arena, his voice low and calm as he spoke to him. "Let's go. Sasuke, you need to rest, and we need to talk." Sasuke nodded, though a hint of apprehension crossed his features as he followed Kakashi out of the arena. As Kakashi led Sasuke out of the arena, he leaned in close and whispered, his voice barely audible, "I'll seal the curse mark for now." Sasuke's eyes widened in shock, his body stiffening at Kakashi's words. He hadn't expected anyone, not even Kakashi, to know about the mark's true nature, much less be able to control it. His mind raced as he processed what this could mean, a mixture of relief and apprehension washing over him. He glanced at Kakashi, but the older shinobi's face remained calm and unreadable, giving no further explanation. As they continued to walk, Sasuke's shock lingered, but he realized quickly that this was his chance to stay in the exams without the curse overtaking him. At least for now. The electronic scoreboard whirred to life once again, its letters rapidly cycling through the remaining names. The tension in the room was palpable, each genin wondering if they would be the next to step into the ring. Then, after a few long seconds, the names came to a halt. Zakubumi versus Shino Aburame. As the names appeared on the board, Zuka glanced at his opponent and scoffed. "Who's that loser?" His tone was dismissive, his confidence oozing through his words as he stepped into the center of the room, cracking his neck and stretching his arms on the other side. Shino remained silent, calmly adjusting his sunglasses, his expression unreadable. He didn't rise to Zuka's provocation. He merely walked forward with his hands in his pockets, his eerie calmness enough to send a ripple of unease through the other genin. "Zakubumi of the Sound Village versus Shino Aburame of the Leaf Village," Hade announced, stepping back after confirming both were ready. "Begin." Zuka smirked as soon as the command was given, raising his arms. "In an instant I'll finish this quick," he declared, preparing to unleash his signature technique. But Shino, as always, remained motionless, as though waiting for Zuka to make the first move. The match between Shino and Zuka began with an intense focus. Zakubumi, glaring at Shino, clenched his single usable arm, his right arm still hanging limp from a previous injury. Without hesitation, Zuka dashed forward, swinging his left arm wildly at Shino's face. Shino stepped back, narrowly avoiding the blow, but keeping his calm, analytical expression. "Zuka wasn't done yet. Got you," he yelled, aiming his left hand directly at Shino and unleashing a powerful sound wave from the vents embedded in his palm. A violent blast of compressed sound energy hit Shino square in the chest, sending him flying backward across the room and crashing into the ground with a heavy thud. The impact kicked up a cloud of dust as Shino lay on the floor, unmoving for a moment. Zuka smirked triumphantly. "That's what you get for standing around like a loser." But as the dust settled, Shino slowly rose to his feet. Adjusting his glasses, he calmly wiped his face, revealing a trail of bugs crawling over his skin. Zuka's expression shifted from triumph to confusion as he noticed the insects beginning to swarm around Shino's body. "That's enough," Shino said, his voice cold and steady. "You will lose this fight." Zuka's eyes narrowed, the weight of Shino's words grating on his pride. I'm still standing. "And you're barely holding on. What makes you think you've already won?" Shino turned slightly, gesturing toward the swarm of Kakachu that gathered behind him. "Your choice is simple. You can attack me or the bugs, but not both. Either way, you'll be left defenseless." Zaku grit his teeth, growing furious. "You think I'm weak?" He grinned wickedly as he raised his limp right arm. "You're wrong. I still have another trick up my sleeve." With a sudden movement, Zuka swung up his seemingly useless right arm too. Everyone's shocked, his vents opened. "I'm not done yet," Zuka screamed as he prepared to blast Shino and his bugs from both directions. Shino's gaze remained steady as he watched the scene unfold. "You shouldn't have done that," he said, his voice soft but filled with certainty. Zu unleashed his sound wave in both directions, one toward Shino, the other toward the swarm of insects, but before the compressed air could fully escape. Both vents on Zuka's hands suddenly jammed. The Kakacha bugs had already infiltrated his arms and blocked the pathways, clogging the vents completely. His eyes widened in horror. No. He barely had time to react before both of his arms were consumed by the full force of his own sound wave, creating a massive internal explosion. The technique backfired, and his arms were ravaged by the blast. Blood splattered as his body was thrown violently to the ground. His arms, now mangled and destroyed, the crowd stood in silence, shocked by the brutal counterattack. Zuka groaned in pain, trying to move, but his body wouldn't respond. Shino quietly approached him from behind, his bugs swarming back into his sleeves in one swift, precise movement. Shino delivered a sharp chop to the back of Zuka's neck, knocking him out cold. The sound ninja collapsed, completely unconscious. Hate, watching from the sidelines, stepped forward and raised his hand. Winner. Shino Aburame. Shino walked away methodically, as though the battle had been nothing more than an inevitable outcome. Zuka's broken body lay on the floor, defeated and humiliated by Shino's calculated victory. Meanwhile, with Kakashi and Sasuke, as Kakashi finished weaving the final hand signs, he pressed his palm against the curse mark on Sasuke's neck. The seal flared with a glowing light, surrounding the mark with complex symbols that restrained its sinister power. Sasuke's body stiffened as the sealing process began to take effect. The mark pulsed violently under Kakashi's hand, as if resisting, but eventually the power was subdued. Sasuke gasped sharply, his eyes widening in shock. He felt a surge of intense pressure, and then his body gave out. The strain from the curse mark, combined with the seal, overwhelmed him. He collapsed, falling unconscious in Kakashi's arms. Kakashi gently lowered Sasuke to the ground, his expression calm but thoughtful as he looked at the unconscious boy. He sighed, muttering to himself, "At least this should hold it off for now," as he was about to lift Sasuke to carry him out. A chilling presence suddenly filled the room. Kakashi's eyes narrowed, his senses immediately alert, emerging from the shadows. Orochimaru stepped forward, his eyes gleaming with twisted amusement. "Orochimaru," Kakashi muttered, his voice cold. The serpentine Sannin smiled darkly. "You're quite the persistent one, Kakashi, but no matter how many seals you place, you cannot stop the inevitable. Sasuke will come to me of his own free will. The allure of power is far too tempting for someone like him." Kakashi remained silent, his gaze locked onto Orochimaru, unwavering. "That boy," Orochimaru continued, his voice dripping with malice. "He thirsts for strength to kill his brother's strength, to avenge his clan. No seal can restrain such a desire forever." Kakashi clenched his fists, but his composure didn't falter. "As long as I'm his teacher, I'll make sure he doesn't fall into your hands." Orochimaru's smile widened, his tone laced with mockery. "We'll see. It's only a matter of time before he seeks me out." With that, Orochimaru turned and vanished into the shadows just as quickly as he had appeared, leaving behind an unsettling silence. Kakashi knelt beside Sasuke, his eyes softening. "I won't let him have you," he whispered before lifting the unconscious boy onto his back. "Not if I can help it." Back to the preliminaries. As the preliminary rounds continued, the atmosphere in the arena remained charged with anticipation, punctuated by the dramatic and varied outcomes of the matches. First up was the bout between Kankuro and Misumi Tsurugi. The match began with Tsurugi confidently closing in on Kankuro, seemingly having him trapped. However, just when it appeared Tsurugi had the upper hand, the situation took an unexpected turn. The so-called Kankuro was revealed to be a mere puppet, expertly controlled by the real Kankuro. Hidden behind the scenes with a swift maneuver, Kankuro's puppet ensnared Tsurugi, rendering him unable to escape. Tsurugi's defeat was sealed as Kankuro's puppet delivered the final blow, showcasing Kankuro's clever use of his puppet mastery. Next was Sakura Haruno versus Ino Yamanaka. The fight was a fierce showcase of both kunoichi skills and their deep-rooted rivalry. The match was intense, with both girls demonstrating impressive tactics and abilities. Ino attempted to use her mind transfer jutsu to gain control over Sakura, but Sakura's resilience kept her in the fight despite a valiant effort from both sides. The match ended in a dramatic double knockout, with both fighters collapsing to the ground simultaneously. The medics rushed in to attend to both competitors as the crowd erupted in mixed cheers and concern following. That was the match between Tenten and Temari. Tenten's expertise with weapons was severely undermined by Temari's large fan as the match began. Temari unleashed a powerful gust of wind that scattered all of Tintin's weapons, leaving her defenseless with her arsenal neutralized. Tintin had little chance against Temari's relentless wind-based attacks. The match concluded quickly with Temari's overwhelming victory, demonstrating the formidable power of her wind techniques. Finally, Shikamaru Nara faced off against Kin Tsuchi. Shikamaru, known for his strategic brilliance, employed his shadow possession jutsu to outmaneuver Kin using his shadows to control her movements. Shikamaru forced Kin into a precarious position. Kin, unable to escape Shikamaru's well-executed strategy, ended up being knocked out by her own actions. Shikamaru's clever tactics and strategic foresight earned him a well-deserved victory. Further showcasing his tactical genius, the preliminary rounds had seen a variety of combat styles and strategies, with each match adding to the excitement and tension of the Chunin exams as the final matches approached. The remaining genin waited with bated breath for their chance to prove themselves in the arena. Uzumaki Naruto versus Inuzuka Kiba. He was itching to get into the ring and show everyone just how much he had improved since his days. As the so-called dead last Kiba's name flashed up next to his, and the Inuzuka's usual cocky grin widened, Kiba was certain that he had drawn the easiest opponent. Looks like I'm up against the dead last, he said with a smirk, his voice carrying across the room. Guess I lucked out. Naruto stepped forward with a grin. Don't be so sure, Kiba. I've been training hard, and I'm not the same Naruto you remember. You're in for a surprise, Kiba scoffed, dismissing Naruto's claim as bravado. Whatever, just don't hold me up. I've got better things to do than waste time with you. The two fighters took their places in the center of the arena. Naruto, brimming with excitement and confidence, made a show of exasperation, waving his hands dramatically towards Kiba and his loyal companion. Akamaru, come on, Kiba, get that puppy out of the arena so we can start this already, he called out, his voice carrying a mix of impatience and challenge. Kiba, not one to be easily intimidated, shot Naruto a defiant glare. No way. Akamaru is fighting with me. Like always, we're a team, he retorted, his tone full of stubborn pride. Naruto turned to Hate, who was standing at the edge of the arena, seeking clarification. Is that even allowed, he asked curiously. Hate, with his characteristic calm demeanor, nodded in confirmation. Any animals and ninja uses as part of their skills are considered the same as any weapons or tools they are allowed in the match, he explained, his voice steady and authoritative. Naruto, not one to be easily deterred, turned back to Kiba with a determined glint in his eye. Whatever, I could beat you even if you had a pack of wolves with you, he declared boldly, his tone brimming with self-assuredness. Kiba smirked, his confidence only growing. Big talk from the dead last. Naruto's excitement was palpable as Hate turned to the genin and asked if they were ready. Both Naruto and Kiba nodded eagerly, their faces set with determination. Hate signaled the beginning of the match. As soon as the signal was given, Naruto's mind raced. Right, use your head, Naruto, show everyone you've grown, he reminded himself, trying to recall what little he knew about Kiba's fighting style. I haven't seen him in action with Akamaru before. I need to figure out how he fights. Use your clones. Naruto promptly summoned several shadow clones. He watched as Kiba, having dismissed Naruto as a mere threat, immediately took action. Kiba dropped to all fours, activating his beast mimicry jutsu. With a burst of speed, Kiba launched himself at Naruto. Naruto's clones intercepted the attack, but one was swiftly taken out by Kiba's surprise assault. The remaining two clones managed to hold Kiba at bay, though Kiba's ferocity and skill left him momentarily taken aback. Naruto's improvement in taijutsu was evident, but Kiba, unfazed, declared, you'll need more than better taijutsu and a few clones to beat me. Kiba once more charged at Naruto, this time with Akamaru by his side. As Kiba neared, he tossed a smoke bomb onto the field. Naruto's eyes widened as the smoke began to envelop him. He quickly tried to escape, but as he neared the edge of the smoke, Akamaru ambushed him. When the smoke cleared, Naruto was revealed lying unconscious beside a jubilant Akamaru. Kiba grinned triumphantly. Haha, well done, Akamaru, he cheered, reaching out to hug his dog. But before the hug could be completed, Akamaru transformed into Naruto, who swiftly delivered a powerful punch to Kiba's face. Kiba staggered back, stunned by the unexpected counterattack. As Kiba struggled to his feet, he saw Naruto grinning from across the arena. Next to Naruto stood another Naruto, one of his shadow clones, holding Akamaru firmly by the paws. Kiba shook his head in disbelief. You've gotten stronger, Naruto, but I'm still going to kick your ass. With a determined look, Kiba reached into his pocket and threw something towards Akamaru. The dog caught it in his mouth, and moments later, His size increased, and his fur turned a vibrant red Naruto's. Clone released the now-enlarged Akamaru, who quickly joined Kiba. Kiba shouted, "It's time to end this," and with Akamaru barking atop his head, Kiba performed his man-beast clone technique. Akamaru transformed into a more feral version of Kiba, and together, they charged Naruto with a wild, animal-like aggression. Naruto, unimpressed by the display, muttered to himself, "This guy's got to be on drugs or something." Hiate's voice cut through the arena. "It's a military ration pill they're permitted in the matches," much to Naruto's irritation as the pair of Kiba and Akamaru bore down on him with furious speed. Naruto used his shadow clones to keep up the pressure. The clones and Kiba's attacks caused a chaotic melee, but Naruto finally managed to spot the real Kiba when he called out to Akamaru to stop attacking. Naruto quickly had his clones throw kunai to separate Kiba and Akamaru, with the two now apart. Naruto directed his clones to engage Akamaru, while he himself charged at Kiba. The ensuing taijutsu bout was intense, with Naruto demonstrating that he was not just on par with Kiba's taijutsu skills, but superior. He countered, dodged, and blocked Kiba's attacks with impressive agility. Naruto's grin widened as he shouted, "Now it's time to end this." Kiba, he launched a powerful combo that sent Kiba sprawling to the ground as Kiba struggled to rise. "Hey," declared Naruto, the winner. Naruto's face beamed with satisfaction as he strolled up the staircase, elated by his decisive victory. Throughout the match, he had never been under any serious threat, and that realization filled him with immense pride and happiness. What if Naruto unlocked his hidden shadow clone power early?